UK. On DAB+. On your smart speaker. On your smart TV. And on your side. This is Talk.
A very good afternoon, welcome along. It's just gone 4 o'clock. I was just sitting here thinking this headset's not working. That's great, Joe. It isn't working at all. What a great start to the show. Never mind, anyway, here we are. Welcome along. Thank you very much indeed for making it talk. We're live across the UK. The home, of course, of free speech and common sense, and it's been only 4 days since I was here, but so much has happened. But I'm not going to talk about Heathrow. Heathrow can embarrass itself. That rather summed up the United Kingdom. I want to talk about Rachel Thieves, Richard III, our Chancellor of the Exchequer, Rachel from Accounts, who apparently, in a shocking admission, plans on finding maybe up to 50,000 civil servants that she can get rid of. Now, on the one hand, I sort of agree with Ian Collins. This is tremendous news. This is really very impressive. But if they can find 50,000 Labour who are in the pockets of the unions, it makes you wonder how many people we are paying to do irrelevant jobs whilst the rest of us are struggling to make ends meet. The state will be slashed under Labour. Who'd have thought you'd ever have heard that? If you want to be part of the show this afternoon, as ever, my friends, you know the number, I hope. 3 ways of contacting us. Our Jodie is back from Liverpool and looking lovely. That's what she asked me to say. 0344 499 1000 is the only number you need. Lanky Ryan, he likes a voice note, so you can get him via WhatsApp. That's the same number, but a different thing. I'm doing it with my hands. This doesn't work on the radio, but it's 0344 499 1000. Or you can text to 87222. Please do start your message with the word talk. We can talk about how the civil service, the blob, could be under risk of Labour swinging cuts. We can talk about Angela Rayner. She went to Ethiopia. It were an important official visit, and she decided she wanted to go on to safari because she hadn't seen any animals in Stockport. We can talk about that. We can talk about how the government itself are admitting that migrants will be staying in hotels for years, costing about £8 billion a day, probably to the economy. We can talk about the asylum farce. I can't go home, my son's autistic. I can't go home, I've lost my phone. Sod off, it's not your country, we're skint. 0344 499 1000. Hello, Margaret. Jess, where is this useless government going to stop jumping on the gravy train? More tickets for Rachel Thieves, and Angela Rayner wants a safari freebie. Of course, yes. Rachel Thieves went to a Sabrina Carpenter show. The only Carpenter... Never mind. Anyway, listen, at 4:05, there is only one way to open the show. A man who does a fantastic job. Hold on a second, I can read this. He does a really fantastic job on a Thursday when he does drive time on Talk. Harry Cole, good afternoon.
Hello, Jeremy.
Mate, you made me laugh. Not many people make me laugh on the radio. You made me laugh the other week. You got the number right.
Face for radio. What a tongue twister it is there.
What?
The number.
Right, so this number thing, because I have an argument with my colleagues. Why do people go 03
So I would say 03 444 99 1000.
It's 0344 499.
Yeah,
4499 1000.
See, my weird sort of brain.
No,
I could probably get on pip for this, but I can't look at that and say that out.
Does it really stress you out?
It stresses me out. It makes me sweat a little
This
bit.
man's interviewed prime ministers and he can't read a bloody telephone number. Mate, what a sort of weekend, and it's all today about Rachel Thieves or Richard III. He says, Sir Keir Starmer, his latest line is, I'm going to take some money out of government. Now, for a party that is financed by the unions, for a party that is seen as at best sympathetic to the union cause, that's a major shout out. And we've heard rumours over the weekend in this spring statement it could be 10,000 jobs that go, it could be 50. Harry Cole, what does that say about how bloated the blob is?
Well, exactly. And also remember when the Tories tried to do this, they put it in their manifesto. Jeremy Hunt tried to do it before when he was Chancellor. Look, there's about 50,000 jobs in Whitehall they think can go. Look at the size of Whitehall since COVID. It's gone up, exponentially. It is ridiculous amount of jobs there are. And I thought it was really interesting, actually, that Dave Penman, I was talking to Mike Graham about this earlier as well, Dave Penman, the big old union...
Is he the civil service?
The white-collar-ish union, he was a massive gob, S-I-H-I-T...
Brilliant, I love it,
yeah,
I love it.
Train now,
Well, honestly, 3 shows in and he doesn't say gobs. Yeah, that one.
Yeah. Remember him? Every time the evil Tories would touch anything, he would be to the barricades. He'd have his Whitehall civil servants out on the road. He's like, we'll have a look at the proposals, see what we can find. And you think, hang on, what's going on here? So
this is a bit like the benefits last week when they said we're going to have to take some benefits away. And I remember speaking to a Tory, can't remember which, it was that meaningless, but they said to me, and I remember, hold on a minute, we tried to do this. We were told you're killing poor people.
But let's put this in context. And I was writing my column for The Sun yesterday afternoon. I still can't believe... I have to check this. Every time I write it, I have to look it up just so I believe it. The UK government, the UK state, is going to spend £1.4 trillion in 2026-27. 1.4 trillion.
On what?
On everything. Everything the government spends is going to spend it on defence, on benefits, on the NHS, on education, on schools, on the blob. Everything. £1.4 trillion. How is that possibly sustainable? It is not. Isn't. And even now, Rachel Reeves on Sunday, when she was out doing a media round on Sunday, saying, no. Everything's going to go up. We were just wondering whether it should go up as much. And so all this stuff about, it's austerity's back, you're evil, you're cutting, it's all nonsense. It's tinkering. It's literally not even a salami slice. It's like a little, it's like a piece of paper off the top of the mountain of government spending.
It's really interesting when you read headlines like Rachel Reeves risks, unions' wrath, and you think this is the Labour Party, because it's very easy in opposition to sit there and go, evil Tories, they're taking away benefits, evil Tories, they want to get rid of the blob, evil Tories, evil... This lot, whether it's the realisation that this country is screwed, to me don't have any answers.
Not just screwed, but bankrupt,
We are bankrupt. We can't even... Let's just nail this for people on a Monday afternoon. We cannot even afford the interest on the loans that we take. Now, of course, the old adage, before you were born, the reason the Tories were successful for so long was successive Labour governments printed money, and inflation was at 30%, and everybody wanted a 30% pay rise. And that's how it ended up. But I don't know. Why are we? There has to be an issue with immigration. That has to. If you're letting 5 million people into your country,
we're building 1.5 million homes a year and letting 1.5 million families in. How is that sustainable? And how is it in any way morally acceptable that we spend more now servicing the interest on our debts as a nation every month than we spend on education? And you think, something is, when that is the situation, it is completely whack.
How has it got to that, though, Bud?
COVID was an issue. There is no doubt about that. We took the biggest sustained sort of financial hit as a country, as every country did, and that will take decades and decades.
Let me stop you there. So where we find ourselves, if we attach some of that to COVID, and I still struggle with this. We're going to give you money, and you don't think you're going to have to pay it back.
You just break the psychology about work, and the numbers are so big.
A friend of mine said, "Do you know I can get £50,000 as a COVID loan and bought a Range Rover?"
Yeah.
Ridiculous. I don't know, but this is not how the world works. But how? I mean, is it just the United Kingdom, or are every other country that we know in the same predicament? We just don't know.
Different countries are suffering in different ways, but we have had a particularly hard blow with the fact that our furlough scheme was incredibly generous, and actually there's a generation of people that have just really lost that ability to connect hard work and reward, and actually they want to sit at home.
Been allowed to lose the connection.
By hook or by crook they have, and we splashed so much cash in the way that other countries didn't, and that's it will take a very, very long time to recover from that. But at the same time, that is not an excuse, because if you look at the budget in October, Rachel Reeves came in. She said, we've got the £22 billion black hole. Fine. OK. Even if you agree that's true, maybe it's true, maybe it's not. But if you found a bit of jiggery-pokery in the numbers, fine. But you didn't need to increase government spending by £70 billion, which she did in October. She increased £70 billion to fill a £22 billion black hole. She paid for that by borrowing £30 billion more, sending the cost of borrowing
and gave her uni mates £11 billion worth of rises.
Exactly.
The train drivers. I thought we were skinned.
And she whacked £40 billion of tax raises, including £26 billion on the very people that she needs to get this country going, which are people that employ people.
Is she the woman for the job?
I mean, she's the woman in the job. Who else? What's the alternative? What is it? Who would you look at that? Look at that Labour front bench.
It's extraordinary.
Look at the Labour Party thing, and you think, you know what? He should be there. What?
Jeremy Hunt starts to look like a competent. And I'm not. Listen,
No.
the Tories have probably no chance in ever recovering my vote in 20 years. But the point is this: I look at The only one who slightly impresses me is the Defence Secretary, but
John Healey.
I don't know much
Rolls
about
his sleeves up, but he's a, honest John.
But Lammy, Rayner, Streeting even disappointing, Miliband.
Streeting has potential.
Reeves.
Streeting has potential if he can do something.
Put the knife right between Sir Keir Starmer's shoulder.
Except for the fact that unions hate him, and you can never be leader of the Labour Party without the unions backing. That's just how the...
I don't know. They're very keen on. They won't be very keen on Keir Starmer if they do. So that's the sort of main story today. Government facing clash with the unions over spending cuts. Could be upwards of 50,000 off the blob civil servants being made redundant. What do you make of that? Does that not just say to you how bloated that system is and what a waste of money it's been? 0344 499 1000. Migrants. I mean, it's an extraordinary. I love Mike's migrant of the day story. Two today that will absolutely. An illegal Iraqi migrant who fled his home country over his part in an alleged exam fraud. I've loved
exam fraud.
This was has avoided deportation after claiming a people smuggler threw away his ID and his phone.
I mean, the people smuggler, or did he throw him in the...
Of course. And my other favourite, a bid to deport an Albanian criminal has been turned over by one of our bloody courts on human rights grounds. On human rights grounds, as his son has a learning disability. I can't be deported and I'm illegal. My son is autistic.
Yeah, there's ones about losing mobile phones. There's ones... I mean,
chicken nuggets.
Every single day you read another one.
What does that make of us? That makes a joke, I think.
All you need to do is pass one parliamentary bill in this country that says, we disregard the ECHR on the following matters, X, Y, Z. I think we're reaching the stage now where no one's going to really oppose that.
Let's talk about the ECHR, because it's easy for us to sit here and pontificate. You're there, you're in Parliament. Explain in layman's terms to me, if I was standing for Parliament tomorrow, there are several things I'd do straight away. Leaving the ECHR is a no-brainer in my mind. I've heard only Belarus and Russia aren't involved.
Oh,
it was written 70, 80 years ago. It's not fit for flipping purpose. It is being used by left-wing lawyers who are milking the taxpayer out of millions of pounds to defend people who shouldn't be here. And all of that on the back that we are so skint we can't provide our people with the services these people are having.
Let's not forget, it's not just Belarus and Russia are not involved. No, America, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, our allies, half the Commonwealth aren't in this piece.
So why do we stay?
Well, there's two reasons. One, we basically kind of wrote it, so we kind of feel like we kind of own it. That's every time you try to criticise it from the right, they go, "Oh, well, Winston Churchill loved it." Yeah, Winston Churchill loved it in 1950, when the world had just been through the worst world war since the last one. It was a different time. But the thing is, it's not just the ECHR. I think if you're going to spend the political capital that you require to rip up all this, I'm not going to swear, rip up all this nonsense.
Yes. God blank, yes.
We're going to do it. We're not going to do it.
Don't worry about it. Ryan gets... Do you notice he gets worried with his eyes and suddenly appear over the top of the glass? Like that.
If we're going to get rid of that, then we also got to get rid of the UN Refugee Convention, which basically enshrines a load of the similar stuff. There's a whole host of these bills, these sort of treaties, we've signed up for over this. If we're going to have the fight about one, let's have the fight about them all.
So
let's wrap it all into one big
tell me, like
bow.
somebody like Badenoch or Farage or any would-be person who's not on the political side of Starmer, why hasn't anybody got the foresight politically to sit down and go, it might be unpopular, Trump-esque even, but I absolutely guarantee the majority of people in this country would laugh at the ECHR and would want to leave the UN refugee. I honestly believe that. So why aren't politicians brave enough to take these people
it's not
on?
brave. I mean, it's not brave enough. Starmer is clearly Starmer, and his Lord Hermer is his Attorney General. These people have come up through that wave of that system of human rights law, and they love it. They think it's basically the great. They think it is a creation greater than the nation state. They genuinely believe that. They believe that.
They think that something like that is a creation better than our nation state.
Yes,
what, pensioners freezing?
Well, of course it did, because they think that this thing, the human rights law, is the great achievement of mankind, in that there is something bigger than nations, which the left have been very snooty about for a while. And actually, the problem is that is now hurtling towards the reality of what normal people in this country feel, who are, damn it, proud of this country, and rightly so, and don't believe there is a higher power, it's higher judicial power than the British government. So,
to me, it's really,
the British state and the British history.
It's really basic, simple. Maths is the wrong phrase.
It's where law means politics.
You put your own people first. I don't believe that we need a government that seemingly is anti-British. I don't believe we should. I'm quite happy to help other people, right? I get this.
Of course, but
when
it's got a sovereign choice. A sovereign choice.
Not if you can't afford it.
a sovereign choice to help people in the right circumstances at the right time with the right amount of money that fits this country. And I think the weird thing about Starmer is he's going on a bit of a journey, because suddenly he's now waking up to the fact that actually, you know, we're hearing whispers out of Number 10 that they're looking at disobliging, I think that's the correct legal term, disobeying the parts of the ECHR about all this stuff about chicken nuggets and mobile phones and right to life. My son's got a learning disability. All of those excuses which have been weaponised by the legal system, by the sort of ambulance dinghy chasing legal culture. He's starting to go, actually, crikey, where I'm sitting in the big seat, maybe this isn't as great as I've always thought it is.
But you know that the British public think that, most definitely.
And you know what he wants more than anything in the world?
To be re-elected.
Of course.
But what about Badenoch? What about Farage? Why doesn't somebody stand up and say, I believe we should leave the ECHR, the UN Resolution on Refugees?
To be fair to Farage, he's been saying that for 20 years. Well, 15 years. To be fair. Badenoch, getting there. I mean,
really?
Even in the Tory leadership election campaign, she was saying, "Oh, well, we're not going to make any decisions now." I mean, she's pretty hardline now. She's put Robert Jenrick in charge of the review of it, so we all know where he's going to end up. That's
the next leader.
He's a man that's had a look under the bonnet. He's now at the Shadow Justice. He's been in the Home Office. He's had a look under the bonnet, and he knows. You know, he sees what we see.
It does interest me, because one thing that I always say on this show, and as I say, you're nearer to it than me, is I think that people have had enough of being taken for mugs. And I think that it's a bit like to me it's a bit like the National Health Service. It was almost revered. You can't criticise it.
Sacred cow.
I feel that people feel this about sort of politics, ECHR, stuff like that. I think politicians of all sides need to wake up really quickly and work out that the British people might be hacked off about expenses and there might be disillusion, but they are not accepting it anymore. We are not rich enough to help other people.
It's a very hard one to explain. The thing is, once you start getting into... Dominic Raab tried it when he was Justice Secretary and started talking about British Bill of Rights versus the ECH.
And he got done for being a bully.
Well, people zone out. I mean, it's not exactly retail politics, is it?
No.
It's not. So...
No, I get it.
But if you can explain away that this is essentially a pedos charter, it gives pedos protection from prosecution and privacy, it gives terrorists protection from prosecution and privacy, and it gives people who have no right to be in this country protection against being made to leave this country. I think there's a case to be made, and someone will call me populist, and people will say it's outrageous, but there is a very simple case to be made: is why are we essentially outsourcing control of our country to an independent body staffed with anonymous judges, and some of them aren't even judges, some of them are, sort of do-gooding lawyers, appointed but to their countries to represent their countries at the ECHR. Why do they have a say over what we do in this country? And I think if you can distill that into a simple argument, I think you're right, Jez. I think the time has come to have that row.
That's a great line. Just think about this, peeps. I'd love your thoughts on the ECHR. We never know where the show's going to go. We can talk about cutting the civil service. We can talk about immigration. We can talk about freebies. We can talk about that. Outsourcing control. This is such a great line from Harry Cole. The ECHR, we're outsourcing control of our country legally in terms of justice, the morality. People can... He said it's a pedos charter. It's a charter for people who have no right to be here, people who've committed crimes and terrorists, to grab hold of a left-wing lawyer paid by you and me to find some stupid excuse to stay here, and we swallow that to the detriment of our own people. And this is my old adage, and I was going to say it before, Britain always led the way. And I think we have to get off that mindset, a bit like the NHS, because we can't afford to be the leaders of this and that. We need to look, and people say to me, that's a terrible thing to say, you don't know what it's like living in Ethiopia. No, I don't. Ask Angela Rayner. But I do know there are plenty of people north of London, because there is a part of this country, as you and I know, where people are really struggling. If you explain to them on their doorsteps that you can stay in this country when you've committed a crime, or you can ask for this, or you can arrive in a boat and get a 5-star hotel and you can get there, they'll go, well, I haven't seen a doctor in 7 months. I paid my stamp all my life and I can't have my hip replaced. And that's the reality,
and there's multiple veterans who've served this country sleeping on the streets of Britain. While if you jump the queue, you arrive under illegitimate circumstances, you throw your passport in the sea, you pretend you don't know who you are, you put up in a nice 3-4-star hotel, given a meal voucher and driving lessons. I mean,
but I don't...
It's enough to send normal people around the...
But this is what I meant when I said, to me, the beauty of this station, and you and I will be barking up the same tree, it's common sense. To me, It's common sense if you're loaded and you want to help people. It is not common sense to say we can't even afford the interest on the money we owe, and yet we're still opening the door financially and morally to people who are taking advantage whilst our own people are suffering. That's it.
Exactly. And one of my absolute favourite things about sitting in that chair you're sitting in now, and as I have done for a couple of times now, is seeing that screen light up with ordinary Brits at the end of their tether,
absolutely,
and just howling because it's not even it's an utter sense of frustration that why is no one else, how have they got away with this for so long?
I think it's
and
about.
Is it not time just for everyone to go, you know what? This is nuts.
I could stand up, and so could you, and say to the British people, my priority, which is exactly what Trump has done, whether people like it or not, my priority is the British people.
Yeah.
I'm going to make you better off, safer, more respected in the world, and I'm going to make sure that you get what you pay for.
And it won't
How's that difficult?
And it won't be easy, and it might take a little while, but let's at least have the balls to try.
I love it, and I love you. You're on Thursday, are you?
Touch wood.
Oh, fingers crossed. The amazing Harry Cole, 422. Thank you, Harry. 0344 499 1000. We started talking about civil service cuts. We started talking about migration. We got on to the thing that needs to be abolished, the ECHR. I'm going to give you Harry Cole's quote because it's right. We as a country are outsourcing control of so many aspects of this country to left-wing judges under a piece of law from 70 years ago that we could actually leave and look after our own people more. What do you make of it, my friends? 422, give us a call to Talk Drive.
My understanding is whilst their backup power systems operated and protected some of the critical key systems within the airport, they did have to reconfigure some of the electricity supply. All the systems were turned off. They then had to start them again in a safe way. We have asked the National Energy Systems Operator to conduct a review of the incident and any wider lessons that might need to be learnt about energy resilience on our critical national infrastructure.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
My friends, Talk Drive, the home of free speech and common sense. 4:26. It's Monday afternoon. We're live across the UK. Thank you to Harry Cole, the Sun's political editor, here on a Thursday from 4 o'clock. And I just absolutely agree with him. We always start shows with this sort of idea of a few subjects. But let's talk about the ECHR. Winston Churchill thought it was great. Yeah, as Harry said, 70 years ago after the Second World War. Not today, when this country is skint, when there are so many people in this country, be it pensioners, be it farmers, be it veterans, struggling to make ends meet. We've got people coming to this country, this is not racist, this is factual, who are taking advantage of a system that allows them to. I don't almost blame them, I blame the systems. Our public services are creaking. And the most shocking thing that Harry said, which is so true, we cannot even afford to finance the debts, the interest on the money we owe. We're not paying any off. We are skint, and we need to change. Hello to Betty, says Jez, looking fab as always. She's obviously not very well. They've all announced 50,000 jobs to go, merging all the railways. So sack 100 to 2,000 people from public payroll and introduce a new law that means nobody's hiring. Are we in the twilight zone? Couldn't agree more. Mick says, I went swimming today. Lunchtime pool's fully booked because nobody goes to work. Don't start me. Susan's in Sunbury-on-Thames. Very posh there, by the way. Good idea to get rid of some civil servants. What about the House of Lords that needs culling, or MPs who are just getting another pay rise? Yeah, they are, 2.8%. There are far too many of them. Hello to Keith Forres. Does that sound Spanish? I don't know. Jez, you know, if the unions aren't worried about civil servants losing jobs, you know it will never happen. And that will happen over the next 4 to 5 years. They will only hire one for every 3. That level... What? Basically, he's saying it's a complete con and it won't happen. Dino, he put it, not me, in Oxford. Shoot me down if you think I'm barking, but I'm finding the Labour Party very, very sinister. It's almost as if they don't care. Even Rachel Thieves has been caught with her nose in the trough, but it's as if it doesn't matter. 600 quid for a Sabrina Carter tea. I didn't even know. I thought Sabrina Carpenter. I remember the Carpenters, Jodie. I'm that old. She probably doesn't even know what the Carpenters are. Voice note number 1 at 4:30 on a Monday. Jordan on Keir Starmer, go.
It's like Starmer's trying to be a mini Trump, isn't it? He's sacking civil servants who do pointless jobs, and he's also asking people to prove that they're filling potholes in before they get the funding. I thought Trump was bad, though.
Couldn't agree more. Let's go to Essex. Scott, you're on Talk Drive. A very good afternoon, sir. How are you?
All good. Running around like an absolute lunatic, earning loads of money to pay for all these migrants that are sponging off of us.
Being allowed to sponge off us, my friend. What do you say to the people who say, genuine question to you, Scott in Essex, you don't understand. That's very unfair. It's very racist. These people are escaping war-torn countries. These people find it very hard. What's your answer to that? Not me, you.
Well, I can explain it in a easy statement. If Atlantis was to arise out of the water 5 miles off the Cornish coast, the roads aren't paved with gold, they're solid gold. The smallest ramshackle house is bigger than Buckingham Palace. Healthcare can get you up to 200 years. What the hell are you doing living in this country? You'll be on a boat and straight over like lightning.
How would you change it? How would you change it?
Can we get shark-infested waters?
Get off. 4:30, I love it. That's Scott in Essex. I understand people's frustration. I genuinely do. And I hate to sit here every day and talk about, you know, miserable things. But I think Harry's right. I think there's going to come a point where, and it might be Reform, it might be another political party, where people suddenly go, I want bravery. I want politicians who are not scared to say it as it is. It's not racist. It's not right-wing. It's not being unfair. I am very, very happy to help people who can't help themselves. Genuinely, hand on heart, mean that. Breaks my heart when I hear of some of the stories of people in this country. But when I hear of people in this country who are also suffering even more so because we seem to think it's okay to welcome anybody and everybody, to salve the conscience or tick the box of an ideological belief, to me that doesn't make sense. I'll tell you who's next on. Always lovely to have him on Monday. 4:30 today, not 4 o'clock. Not being demoted, he's now calling the shots. Former government special advisor James Price. A very good afternoon, sir. How are you?
Very well. I've been bumped for my big brother Harry Cole, clearly.
But well, you see, you know what's happened when Harry Cole's taking over the asylum. JP, really good to see you. How many days to the wedding?
It's on Saturday. I'm too nervous even to be able to count. A couple of days to go.
Are you really? So are you going to be working on the show from your honeymoon, or are you being a bit of a part-timer? Are you going away straight away, or are you putting your dedication in Jeremy Kyle's Drive Time show?
Let me see if I can stick what will then be Mrs. Price in a spa or something and come and do.
I love that. Stick her in a spa. Are you going away, or are you just carrying on?
Little mini moon just a few days afterwards, and we'll plan a longer honeymoon later on. She started a new job, so that's the priority for now, and then we'll...
All right, get her out to work. Come on, you earn the big bucks. I have things to do. Good for you, mate, and congratulations and the best of luck for Saturday. Can I start, actually... I don't want to start with the civil service news. I want to start with Harry's comment, which I really believe is true. His description of the ECHR is we seem to outsource control of so many parts of this country to a body set up 70 years ago that is not fit for purpose at all.
Yeah, it's a very good description of it. When people voted to leave the European Union, they voted in general to get us away from all these sorts of organisations. I don't think there was a high salience that there were all these other entities that we were going to be kind of stuck in, and yet this is what's happened. And we find that when it was the EU that we would complain about lots of these things, and the EU rightly was getting in the way, now it's all these other bodies. And this idea that, well, Winston Churchill set it up, like, the idea was that we'd seen in Europe a total dereliction of actual human rights, because why? The Nazis had gone around gassing people and killing everybody and all the rest of it, and therefore the rule of law was needed to be reinstated right across the continent, and British judges were the ones to go and do that, because we have already had centuries of the rule of law here. The common law was invented here. All the kind of, going back to habeas corpus 800 years ago, going back hundreds of years before that, and kind of Anglo-Saxon ideas of justice. We've had a very long, proud history here, and we didn't need the ECHR before that, because we had all this kind of law, and so it was for other people. And this idea now that it's become this this horrendous body full of activist judges is the reason why I agree. I think we need to leave it. And it reminds me, I think it's Conquest's third law of politics, that any organisation that it is not explicitly right-wing will eventually become left-wing, and that is what's happened with the ECHR.
Somebody's written here, Jez, Churchill loved the ECHR. What the bloody hell do you think he would feel about it being used in the way it is? Can you imagine him agreeing to somebody not leaving this country? They're a criminal because their son won't like chicken nuggets. We had two more examples today. An illegal migrant, Iraqi migrant, James, who fled his home country over his partner and alleged exam fraud, has avoided deportation from us back there after claiming a people smuggler threw away his ID and phone. You smile, I get more mad. And today a bid to deport an Albanian criminal has been overturned on human rights grounds as his son has a learning disability. We are fast becoming a laughingstock. This ECHR is allowing people to take the what's it out of us. They're just and I have to say, I was talking to somebody about it earlier. I'd be laughing all over my face if I was a left-wing human rights lawyer, wouldn't you, JP?
Yeah, absolutely right. There's loads of money in it for these people.
800 quid a day.
It's extraordinary, isn't it? And the problem we've got is that the Prime Minister built his whole career on this kind of stuff. And this is why he's in such a bind. He can't really go against it, not only because he'll stop being invited to fancy lefty-loving dinner parties in Islington and all the rest of it, but that his whole career will be proven to have been built on a load of cobblers. That's the problem, right? Is this ECHR here in the room with us now? You'd have to ask him, you know? This is a problem. And it's a continuation of what I think Tony Blair's government did, which was to decay and destroy much of the British constitution that would work so well, as we just said, for hundreds and hundreds of years. So it's not just about sort of leaving the ECHR. The problem is that we have woven reference to it and deference to it through so many bits of domestic statute. The Human Rights Act of 1998 was described back then as bringing our rights back home. And I've clashed on this show against idiot lefties who would, go and say, oh, it's so wonderful that we've got the Human Rights Act of 1998. Well, as if in 1997 people were going around being summarily executed.
Absolutely.
Going around being able to rob you and take your car and all. No, it's obvious nonsense. I almost said a rude word then.
It is getting to the point where I think average men and women, families across the United Kingdom, are going to demand that something's done. Can I talk about the other big thing today? Rachel Reeves, or Rachel Thieves, as I call her. Take a look at her, ladies and gentlemen. She looks like Richard III. She is threatening to risk the wrath of the unions and could cut up to 50,000 civil service jobs, which begs me to ask one question, JP. if the Labour Party can potentially find 50,000 useless souls in Whitehall that we're paying for, what's the reality genuinely of how many people are doing jobs that we don't need and having money? I mean, I need Elon Musk in Whitehall tomorrow. That's what I think.
Yeah, absolutely right. The Adam Smith Institute, of which I'm a senior fellow, did a really terrifying, I was going to call it great, a terrifying paper last week that highlighted that something like 52% of everybody in the United Kingdom is in some way now totally reliant on the state, whether they work directly for the state or they get all their income from the state, or even their job wouldn't exist without the state paying for it. That's terrifying, 52%. And this is moving towards dangerously commie levels. And it distorts and it warps all the kind of incentives that you'd want from a healthy society. That means, you take out all the other people who are in full-time education or whatever else. The number of people who we've got actually supporting the edifice of the state, the people who are listening today who work in small or large businesses, there are smaller and smaller number of people supporting a larger and larger number of people. And so even if all of these civil servants were great and doing great work, which they aren't and they're not, we would have to be making lots of savings in other areas. And I can tell you for a start, there were so many people in the department in which I worked who were doing non-jobs. And that's just not acceptable because they're being paid for by those people at home listening who are slaving away every day to make ends meet.
I said to Harry, JP, maybe I see it too simplistically. I believe there will be a surge in a call for a Trump-esque person. Before all the bedwetters, just hear me out 1 minute. The Orange Man, baby, there's much about him that I don't like. But can you imagine, whether it's left, centre or right, a politician standing up and saying, do you know what, not only do I hear you, I acknowledge you. We can pretend that we are 70 years old. We're not. The world has changed. We are not able to be the leader of almost everything because we are skint. We cannot even afford the interest on the money that we owe, and thus I cannot give to everybody and spread Britishness everywhere because I've got people freezing and starving and homeless. I need to look after men, and you can call that every name under the sun. I believe the British people would lap that up, James Price, genuinely lap that up.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think what's nice is that all of our problems, almost all of our problems, are self-inflicted.
Yes.
They've been created by deliberate policy decisions to make us poorer, to make us less safe and to make us less free in the name of things that most of us didn't vote for. Mass migration, being soft on terrorists, spending more money on foreigners than we do on people here, all these sorts of things. They're all things that can be reversed. All the sorts of anti-business policies and regulations and things like that that are making us poorer, afuera. We could get rid of all of that stuff. You wouldn't necessarily even need an uber charismatic figure like Donald Trump for good or ill. In a way, you want someone who kind of talks cuddly, soft left language while being incredibly ruthless. And of course, my party, the Conservatives, did the opposite. We started to talk quite tough, talk to the right, and then just allowed the blob, the civil service, to make us govern to the left. And that's why we've fallen into such a state that we're in now. And I think that everybody knows that the country is going in the wrong direction, right? We're veering off course. And the more you veer off course, the more acute, the more breakneck the course correction is required will be. So the best day to do this was yesterday. The next best day is today. But the longer we leave it, and I think we're going to leave it for another 4 years because Labour have got all the structural incentives not to do anything better.
That's true.
Stay and hop to the unions, stay and hop to the ECHR, stay and hop to all the ghastly globalist charities and all that kind of stuff. They're not going to fix it. So the course correction that comes, whether it's the Conservative Party or the Reform Party or another party or a confluence of all of them, they're going to have to do what Maggie ended up doing in the 80s, which is some quite unpleasant things in some ways, because not because she wanted to, but because she had to, because all the weak men in the decades before didn't have the stomach to do what
and however much people hated that, history showed, and there were mistakes that Margaret Thatcher made, history showed that actually being strong and doing that is important. Can I just say, and I'd love to talk to you forever, it's 20 to 5, we wish, have we sorted him out a wedding present or anything? Ryan, honestly, hopeless. So Saturday is what time?
It starts at 2:30.
He'll say, do you take this woman to be your lawful wedded wife? You said I do, and then you'll have to look at her. Listen, we wish you the best of luck. We hope it goes well. James Price, congratulations. Good luck with your wedding on Saturday. We'll speak to you very soon. It's 20 to 5. We're live across the UK. This is JK on Drive. So, civil service cuts. How many of them are doing useless jobs? ECHR, you're paying for lefty lawyers to allow an Iraqi man to stay here who's a criminal because his son's autistic. I'm going to lie down. See you in 3.
the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
4:45, this is Jeremy Kyle on Talk Drive. 0344 499 1000. Text to 87222. Voice notes to Ryan via WhatsApp's all cracking on here. Our next guest is the only Reform UK London Assembly member. On my piece of paper, it says Alex Wilson AM, to which I said to Ryan, does that mean he only gets interviewed in the morning? That's how stupid I am. Alex, a very good afternoon. Welcome to Drive. How are you?
Good afternoon, very well. And,
I know you. You're that poor bugger that stands up in the Assembly and tries to have a go at Sadiq Khan and nobody listens to you. Oh,
I know. It's a bit of a lonely affair being there on my own at the moment, but if the polling stays anywhere near remotely where it is at the moment, then by the time we get to the next London election, I know we've got a bit of a wait for that, but there should be getting at least another 2 or 3 members elected. So we're, as a party, as you've seen from the polling, the membership, everything, we're off the scale since the general election. Got to keep that going, keep that momentum up, and then by the time we get to the next London election, I'm sure I'll have a nice group of colleagues with me, and then we'll be able to do all sorts of wonderful things.
Alex, really good to have you on. Thank you for taking the time. I'm going to set you a question that I was talking to James Price, former government advisor, and before that speaking to Harry Cole, the Sun's political editor. Here's what I don't understand. As I view this country at 60 years of age nearly, I see a country that cannot, and this is a fact, that cannot even afford the interest on the debts that it owes. And yet we have a country that, under the guise of caring so much and being Great Britain, we're still providing seemingly everything to anybody who's never paid for anything and can just come to this country. And I've heard all the war-torn rubbish, France. If you cared about your family, you bring you with you. The reality is, when I hear about pensioners and the unemployed, and I hear about, veterans, and I hear about farmers and all these people, it really amazes me that we still have governments, and I include the Tories in this, that seemingly put anybody who's not here before its own people. That's not racist, or I'm just being totally straight. The ECHR, seemingly defended because Churchill loved it 70 years ago. I don't understand why a politician doesn't stand up and say, day one, I'm leaving that. I don't care about the blob. I don't care about being unpopular. We're getting to a point, are we not, Alex, where we need somebody almost like Donald Trump to come into this country and put their foot down.
Well, Jeremy, you're in luck, because there is a party that is pledging to do exactly that. It's Reform UK. We've seen over the last generations the failure of both the Conservatives and Labour in government across a whole range of issues. But on this particular issue of uncontrolled migration, the boat crossings, Keir Starmer came to power talking about smashing the gangs. Well, we've had 5,000 crossings since the turn of the year. That's the highest at this point in the year so far, since records began. He's not smashing the gangs. The only thing he's done is smashed his own credibility. But the Tories were no better. So, you're absolutely right. We need a party that needs to have the courage to stand up and say, we're actually going to put the interests of our country and the people who pay taxes, work hard, go out and try and earn a living. Those people have got to have their interests put first. And there's only one party at the moment that's going to do that, and that's Reform.
I would suggest, though, I would say this to you, and this is not a criticism, this is me being as productive as I can. I have a very good friend, Rob, and we were talking last night about Reform. I voted for Reform, everybody knows that. I, like him, are concerned by what happened with Rupert Lowe, and I know the official response. But there are many, many, many members of Reform and people who voted for Reform who are saying that to get elected or to give himself a better chance, Nigel is going further to the centre, whereas the party was based on being more outspoken about immigration and more outspoken about all these things that need sorting in this country. How would you, as an Assembly member, assure would-be or people who have voted Reform that actually Reform wouldn't end up drifting to the centre because actually, essentially, the civil service call the shots anyway? What would make your party different to get elected?
No, you're right to raise the issue, and obviously it's been a bit of an issue over the last couple of weeks, and I really wish that it hadn't have happened. It's not helpful to anybody. It's not helpful to the party. It's not helpful to Rupert either, and it's certainly not helpful to keep sort of playing it out on a kind of back and forth spat via social media. But fundamentally, Reform UK is the party that will do this. We are the party that put in our manifesto, or as we call it, our contract with the people, that we would leave the ECHR. We would stop the boats. We would turn them back, take them back to France, and we will make it clear that anybody who crosses illegally will not be granted the right to remain in the UK. No other party will deliver that. So if you want that, you've got to back Reform.
When you see Rachel Thieves that woman from accounts who looks like Richard III, warning that she could cut up to 50,000 civil service jobs and risking, essentially, the wrath of the unions, her paymasters. My first reaction, I'd love to know yours, was, if they're talking about 50,000 could go, what's actually the reality of how many people are part of this bloated civil service that is another part of how this country is being screwed?
Yeah, absolutely right. And at the election last year, we had a pledge that we would instruct every spending manager in the public sector to save 5% of their budget without impacting on frontline services. We think that's perfectly deliverable. And now you see even the Labour Party agreeing, effectively, that there is wastage and there is a bloat. I mean, we've seen the civil service grow massively since the pandemic. All that Rachel's cuts, or proposed cuts, would do is take us back to the size of the civil service that it was pre-pandemic, and I don't remember anyone then complaining that we were undergoverned. And it's the same in the London Assembly, where I sit. Since Sadiq Khan became mayor of London, his and the payroll at City Hall has absolutely ballooned. I tried to table a budget amendment that would have stripped back a lot of that waste, reinvest that into frontline policing. And I'm sure you probably saw the clip where I tried to table that, and Sadiq said that as a rule of thumb, he would encourage no one to ever work with reform. That's what we're up against. And that's why I think...
I saw that clip. So forget the fact that you're elected, because you have a different... I don't like him at all, but I have a real problem with him. I think he's appalling. And it really annoys me about Londoners that better candidates won't put up. Only 1 million people voted for Sadiq Khan as he rushes around in his 2 gas-guzzling Range Rovers. I've got mates who are black cabbies. They can't go anywhere. 40% of their income has gone because they can't drive anywhere in London, for God's sake. The man's... I can't have him. I can't have him at all. But yes, of course you've got to have that. But to be told, I'm not talking to you because I'm not talking to anybody from... Who does he think he is?
No, it's shocking. But the shocking thing is that... the other parties on the Assembly, and I include the Conservatives within this, none of them were willing to second my amendment, and so it wasn't tabled, it wasn't properly discussed.
What's it like being the outsider? Is it frightening, or is it actually really quite brilliant? Sort of.
It's a bit of both. I mean, it's quite lonely at times.
Yeah.
I mean, anyone who wants to go into politics, you do need to have a bit of a thick skin, and you take the job seriously, but never take yourself too seriously. That's the kind of golden rule that I follow, and I think if I stick to that, probably not going to go too far wrong. But it's really important that I use this platform that I've got. I was elected at the same time as the mayor and as the other 24 Assembly members. I have a mandate from the people of London to stand up and talk about these issues. And it's really important that I've tried to show over the last year what it means to have a reform voice elected at a level of government. We've got the local elections now coming up in a few weeks' time for county councils across the country, those where the Labour government and the Tory council leaders didn't manage to conspire to get them cancelled. And there's huge opportunities there, about 1,600 seats up for grabs, huge opportunities for people to elect reform councillors to do a similar job to me, being that voice of common sense in their local community.
Honestly, I cannot tell you, refreshing to have you on, Alex, and we'll have you on again, I cannot tell you how many people... You're now saying common sense, Trump's now saying common sense, Talk have been saying common sense for 5 years. I think we should sue you all. Alex Wilson, AM, see what I know. Good to have you on. Thank you very much indeed. Reform's only UK London Assembly member. 0344 499 1000, 9 minutes to 5. You with Talk Drive.
My understanding is whilst their backup power systems operated and protected some of the critical key systems within the airport, they did have to reconfigure some of the electricity supply. All the systems were turned off. They then had to start them again in a safe way. We have asked the National Energy Systems Operator to conduct a review of the incident and any wider lessons that might need to be learnt about energy resilience on our critical national infrastructure.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Keep the calls coming, 0344 419 1000 to the phone lines, to Burnley. Warren, you're on Talk Drive. Couple of minutes only. What you got, pal?
Hi, Jeremy. Yeah, it's just, I just wanted to bring up or ask you the question, or anybody else that you have on the show there, is, has any real investigational work by our newspapers been done on these so-called gangs that are sending everybody over? And the reason I ask that question is because, first and foremost, we used to have some of the best investigational reporters in the world, I believe, but nobody seems to have done anything, and we all accept that it's gangs running it. Now, how do we know it's not foreign governments, you know, like the likes of Russia or Iran, paying gangs or whoever's controlling these people to get them out of these refugee camps where they're supposedly walking around with bags of dollars, thousands of them, than paying to get on a boat, because they don't have bank accounts, these people, and they're lucky if they earn $1 or $2 a day.
If you sit where I sit every day, Warren, it does beg many questions. But the one thing that I find myself saying the whole time when I go home is, how can this entire country, be it not the electorate, the government, the civil service, the justice system, the social care, everything, how is this allowed to happen when patently this is affecting negatively so many people in this country? And what I say every day, and you'll hear me say it, is that I genuinely believe the British people, and when I say are on the turn, I'm not advocating anything. I just think the British people have had enough. I think we've always had the stiff upper lip, and we've always helped people, but our own are suffering, Warren, and that, I don't disagree with you. Let's smash the gangs. How are you going to do that? I mean, do you remember that story a couple of weeks ago when a couple came back in their motorhome from France and they found a migrant underneath or under the boat or something? They didn't know anything about it. They were fined £1,500 and he was put in a hotel for 3 weeks.
Yeah, so why don't we fine the government for letting them in?
Couldn't agree more, mate. Listen, thank you so much indeed. Warren in Burnley, 0344 419 1000. Voice notes are raining in. Jack on the government cuts, go.
You know, government, good idea, slimming down the blob. Did any of them think about the possibility that the taxes that they're now putting up on businesses where no one can afford to employ anyone, all these people that are potentially going to be losing their jobs and made redundant are probably just going to end up on the benefit system that they're trying to fix? Just a thought.
Couldn't agree more. Chloe on government cuts as well, go.
You and I both know this is never going to happen. These people will just be moved around to different positions. The union certainly won't allow any redundancies or sackings. There might be a bit of natural wastage with retirements and so on, but it's not going to happen. It's like moving the deck chairs on the Titanic.
Oh, Chloe, I couldn't agree more. Let's head to the West Midlands. Robert, you're on Talk Drive. Good afternoon, sir. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you, Jess. Just a bit fed up with this government, that's all. And what they're doing with my taxes, what I'm paying to them. Right, Jez, I don't want to pay for illegal immigrants, mate.
No.
I just do not. I don't want to pay for their hotels. I don't want to pay for the mobile phones. I don't want to pay for their clothing. What I want my taxes to go towards is the old people, is to help the farmers, is to get the homeless off the streets, our own veterans who have served for this country, not to illegal immigrants. And every government we've had since Tony Blair, they've just took it out of us, the British people, Jez.
I could, do you know, Rob?
For us, mate.
Rob,
no one.
Rob, I could not agree more. And I'll tell you what I do. I said it to Harry Cole earlier, mate, and I'd be really interested in your response to this. To me, it is common sense, right? we were this country that was built on Great Britain. We led the way. We're industrial revolution. We're going to help everybody. We can't afford to help ourselves. And I don't care what the bedwetters say to me. Charity in this instance should begin at home. And for all the people that poo-poo that in Islington, you're right. Try telling that to the old people who can't heat their homes. Try telling that to the farmers whose land are being grabbed by this Green government. Try telling that to veterans. It doesn't make sense, does it, bud? It doesn't make sense.
No, and Jez, it gets me really, really angry because they've earned for this country and they've worked for us, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, I've got a little solution which, you know, it might not go far, but, you know, all these people who say we should let them in and they should come in and we should do this for them, we should do that for them. I was about bringing in an illegal immigration tax, right? Where if you want them in the country and you want to pay for them, carry on. If you don't, you can select out. It's simple. Once the money's gone, they stay on the beaches.
Mate, I couldn't. I'd send them to the Falkland Islands. Rob, I could talk to you all day, mate. I've got to go, though. In the West Midlands, Rob, speaking, I think, as many people feel. What do you make? Are these civil service cuts going to happen, or is it window dressing? The ECHR, we seem to have people coming and taking advantage when we cannot, this is a fact, afford the interest on the money we owe as a country. We're skins. 0344 499 1000. Talk Drive is on the news at 5 and more after that. Don't go anywhere.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back, my friends. Hour 2 of Drive for Monday, couple of minutes after 5. You're very welcome to, well, the next 2 hours. It's down to you. I mean, there's so much to talk about, and I say it each and every day. I don't set the agenda. This is the home of free speech. It's the home of common sense. Whatever you want to talk about. You might want to talk about illegal immigration. You might want to talk about the ECHR. You might want to talk about, apparently, Rachel Thieves is going to cut upwards of 50,000 civil service jobs. Is she really going to do that? The unions are their paymasters. You might want to talk about the worst film ever made, Snow White. Don't know if you know about this. Disney's live-action remake of Snow White has seriously underperformed in the opening weekend at the box office. That's why, Disney. That's because if you go woke, you go bleeding broke. The movie recast, this is fantastic, the classic elements of the story in a progressive light. I say fantastic, I mean crap. Including ditching the popular songs, including Whistle While You Work, replacing the Seven Dwarfs with reimagined groups of magical creatures, and scrapping the entire sexist, apparently, romantic plot. Result is, no bugger's gone to watch it, which goes to prove that we're not all mad. 0344 499 1000. You can send a voice note to Ryan, who loves them, on WhatsApp, same number, 0344 499 1000, or you can send us a text. We're always delighted to get them, 87222. Start your message with the word talk. Simon Dinage says, I'm coming up to 55, born and bred and contributed to this country since I was 13. How is it now 40 to 50 grand to house illegal illegal migrants or prisoners? I'm not going to receive that amount. How unfair is that? Couldn't agree more. Don's in Chelmsford. Just the worst aspect of the government's failure to stop illegal migrants is that they are prioritised over the indigenous population. Left-wing judges add to the problem, and to this, the disastrous Rachel Thieves and crazy Ed Miliband. It seems to me we're heading to being a banana republic. Good afternoon to Malcolm in Hampshire. The boat people from France, safe country by the way, yeah, we know that, who seem to be able to afford an expensive ticket for just pitching up on a Kent beach. These are the conditions. No promises of benefits or possibility of refugee status or citizenship or even comfortable full board accommodation. This will de-incentivise people coming. Malcolm, you know what, mate? I don't understand it. To me, it sounds mad. At 5:05, delighted to have my next guest, Graham Stewart, the Conservative MP for Beverley and Holderness. Graham, good afternoon. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Jeremy. And you?
Well, I'm sort of angry today, so I'm gonna start, and I want to, because
unusual.
No. But the thing is, and I like you. The thing is, we're all piling in on dreadful Rachel Thieves and Starmer, but so much of what is taking place could also have been dealt with differently 14 years before that. Let me read this to you, Graham, if you don't mind. This is from David Thomas. Why don't we hear any politician, Jezza, simply say that no immigrant, legal or illegal, should be able to access any benefits or welfare when our own people are struggling? That would surely stop the boats, reduce all immigration and ultimately reduce the cost to the British taxpayer. Why are we obsessed with helping other people when our own people are suffering? Graham Stewart.
Well, it's a very good question. Of course, we should put our own people first and people who've paid in. That's what I hear from my constituents when I have a street surgery in the town of Heddon on Saturday. Exactly what people say week in, week out. You know, look after our own first. Do right by the rest of the world. We're not a mean country, but somehow there's a sense, as I think you've already alluded to, Jeremy, that we've tipped it over the other way. And so...
But that started under the Tories, with respect, Graham.
Having migrants come here, staying in, being put up in hotels. We had a government that promised it was going to stop doing that, and they've actually increased the numbers. That just infuriates people. I mean, we, hands up on that. We did not cover ourselves in glory on immigration. We promised to reduce it to tens of thousands. We didn't do it. One of the big resets, the new management of Kemi Badenoch is saying, we can't have politicians who forever insist they got everything right. They didn't.
Yep.
And we didn't. And we've got to come forward. If we're going to win people back, you said yourself, Jeremy, you voted reform because you're just desperate. You had people who told you one thing, did another. We absolutely have to rebuild that trust. And unfortunately, Labour have, come in with a load of promises on this stuff. They're doing the exact opposite, and people aren't going to put up with it. And if we're going to make sure democracy lasts, otherwise people are going to say, well, what's the point?
Well, I couldn't agree more, but I just
say one thing and do another.
I just want to pick you up on something you said, because I think this is quite central to sort of ideology. You said, we're not a mean country. Let me try and explain how I see that, right? Great Britain, I'm 60 this year. Growing up, we led the world in so many ways, or rather we thought we did, and thus we always did right by everybody else. And I think that's great, but it's a bit like the ECHR, Graham Stewart, right? It's no good telling me that Winston Churchill loved it 70 years ago. The world's changed. It's no good telling me that we should still revere the NHS because we're a different, older, bigger population with different needs. I think the British politicians of all sides need to understand that we are not, as a country, able to do what we did, and we need to turn our gaze inwards. And it's interesting when you say that when you're out there, the people in your constituency, I would suspect that that is in almost every constituency, the length and breadth of this country. And it's not meanness, and it's not racist, and it's not... It's basically... It's common sense. It's that horrible... I can never think of a better phrase, but charity begins at home. But it genuinely, sitting here, breaks my heart when I hear, you know, we're funding whatever, wherever, seemingly. And there are pensioners freezing, and there are veterans homeless, and there are farmers having their land grabbed. And I you know, I can make politics very simple, and it's easy for me because I do this. It's more difficult, I'm sure, for you guys. But to me, it's really simple. Do what the British people want/need right now, whether that makes you popular or unpopular with the press or your opponents. And, you know, I hate to use it as an example, but the leader of the free world's doing that because he doesn't give a damn who doesn't agree. He's doing what he told the American people he'd do. Agree with it or don't agree with it. It's true.
Yeah, well, let's, I won't open up the page on Donald Trump, but I mean, I'm not a massive fan of Donald Trump, although, you know, I concede some of the points you're making there. We don't want to end up with a Donald Trump. I don't want to have somebody who says one thing, does another. I want an honesty, but you're right. The country, it feels like the late 70s again. I'm just about old enough to remember that. I suppose I was a teenager at the time. We need a radical change. So that's why I think it's absolutely right that Kemi Badenoch is saying, well, we're going to take our time. We're not rushing with the answers. We've got to think deeply because we don't want to end up, and we might win. Let me put this to you, Jeremy. We might win the next election quite easily. We could. The Conservatives,
not a chance. Not a chance.
No, just let me play this out. No, we could. Because everyone is going to, if Labour carry on as they are, and let's face it, their big promise was they wouldn't put people's taxes up. What have they done? Put people's taxes up? I mean, all the promises they made and they broke. So there's going to be a desire for change. I think there's a desire for change already, but, you know, who knows what will happen in 2020.
What I would say...
If we do win then, Jeremy, my point being, we have to make sure, and you don't agree with me that it's possible, but if we did, we need to make sure that we have a radical manifesto, that we've properly thought through. What do we do with the civil service? How do we make sure that ministers are heard, that we don't have judges second-guessing Parliament? Judges need to be independent.
Would you leave the
judges making the law for us?
Would you leave the ECHR, Graham Stewart?
One of the things we're looking at is exactly that.
No, would you? Would you?
My instinct is to think we might well need to, but I don't know, because I recognise a lot of this stuff's complicated, which is why you need to do the work. Because it's easy if you're Nigel and his little merry band of 4 or 5 or however many years he can keep within his tent in a week. It's easy.
Actually, but you see, Graham, I consider you a friend, but I'm going to say this to you. I think that last comment, right, is what is wrong with so many Tories, right? You have just said, and forget, listen, I see plenty of problems with Nigel Farage and what's gone with Rupert Lowe. I've been very vocal about that the last 2 weeks. But you just said Nigel and whoever he can keep in his tent. 4.5 million Tory voters who were not going to be told, right, that what they were saying reform was far right. It was actually conservatism that we were all brought up upon, which was low taxation, strong military, strong presence of police and tight borders. Everything Thatcher talked about, everything so many of us were. That is what... Don't disrespect the 4.5 million or you'll never get those people
Jeremy,
voting
I think we had this last time because you were one of them, so you didn't want to be disrespected, quite understandably, on behalf of your viewers who did the same thing. I didn't. I'm not that respectful of Nigel but what we've got to do is listen, and that's why the Conservative Party has been the most successful political party in the whole of Western democracy. Forget Britain, the whole of the world. We've been the best because we do listen. And Kemi is going away, and we need to look at the civil service. How do we manage that properly? Not so we bring in 33-year-old Labour together staffers as director generals of departments, which is what Labour have done. We need to come forward with something openly that shows that politicians elected by the people can enact their manifesto.
Oh, let's talk about that then.
That's the sort of thing we need to do. And we need to control our borders, and we need to unleash the animal spirits of enterprise again, because take it from me, Jeremy, right now, I mean, it is frightening to hear from businesses. If you go around my constituency, speak to small businesses, who's hiring? Show me when you're far away from the jobs market and you're desperate to get a job, doesn't matter whether you're a student or a young person or an older person who's had some problems, typically you go to hospitality. Guess which door is being slammed in their faces right now? It's the Employment Rights Bill that means you don't want to employ anyone. It's the National Insurance Contributions Bill. Labour have just, I don't think they did it deliberately. It's like they are just so ignorant of how business actually works.
I couldn't agree with you, but
I didn't know what they were doing. And therefore, I
let's...
really hope Rachel Reeves, this is her last statement, she needs to be sacked. If Keir Starmer needs to throw her overboard to save his own skin, well, I pray he does, because they need to make changes to that budget so that we get, because without economic growth, it doesn't matter whether you are...
Let me ask you this, so let me get a word, let me get a word in. I'm not sticking up for Rachel Thieves, trust me. Do you believe this sort of... what did he say today, Starmer? He said, let me quote, I'm going to take some money out of government. There are rumours, of course, doing the rounds that Rachel Thieves could risk the union's wrath by, axing up to 50,000 civil service jobs. So I'm going to put this to you, because it's very easy, and you used to say... Listen, the Tories used to say it about Labour, and I used to say it about Labour. The view from opposition is very different. If they... the Labour Party that is financed, morally, just everything is about union control. If they can find, Graham Stewart, 50,000 potential jobs that they could cut, why the hell didn't the Tories discover? Because I reckon there must have been there are a hell of a lot more of people in Whitehall that don't need to be there. Why wasn't that something that Rishi Sunak or Boris Johnson set about?
Well, it was something that we were looking to set about. I take that we had to rehearse the boring things, but they're true. From Brexit to COVID to the Ukraine crisis, government grew too big. We acknowledge that, and I applaud the fact that Labour are talking about doing that. So whenever they do the right thing, we don't need to be in this, partisan world where you can never confess to the other side doing anything right. I think, Keir Starmer's probably been right, even though it's very difficult dealing with Donald Trump to keep up communications there, and his efforts to... he hasn't condemned Donald Trump and expressed what all the rest of us feel about him. He's tried to make sure that we stay in contact with him. That's probably the right thing to do, given where we're at, Europe's at, where the country's at. Likewise, they need to cut down on the size of the state. But why are they attacking personal independence payments, which aren't about getting people into work? They're about supporting people who've got disability who need support. Why are they doing it? Because they've lost control of the economy. And how have they done that? By killing the animal spirits, by wrecking business. So they've got to fix that, because if you can grow the economy, mission one of their government, a big promise, don't put up people's taxes, but we'll grow the economy. If they did that, then it gives you room for manoeuvre. But within that, they're quite right.
You've always been
it's
great.
Remember, Jeremy, sorry, I do talk too much, but then you bring me on to talk, I guess. So is that Michael Gove pretty much halved the size of the education department in the time when I was scrutinising him as the chairman of the education committee. And do you know what happened to productivity from the education department in that really pivotal period from 2010 to 2015? All sorts of reforms were brought through, and the beginnings of the transformation of our English... But
you were in power till 2024. That's another 9 years. Why didn't you cut more civil servants from more departments then?
Well, you're quite right. The challenge with Brexit, with the pandemic...
But, mate, what I'm trying to say to you is don't talk over me a minute. Graham, listen to me. I get that. It's not for me to convince the British people. But you are not going to win the next election by consistently blaming the pandemic and the Ukraine war, and all, everybody knows that
Jeremy, we lost. Jeremy, sorry, this may be news to you. We lost the last election, our worst defeat since 18.
Why did you? Why did you, in your mind?
Because of things like that, failure on immigration.
You didn't do what you said you were going to do. That's how the British people saw it, right?
Exactly, and that is why we have such a lot of work to do, and we need to quietly go away. I mean, it's important that we're out there, and that's why I'm on your show. But there's just an awful lot of quiet work to be done, so that when you come out and you go into more complicated questions, I don't mean your questions aren't complicated, you know what I mean, on what we're going to do with the civil service, what we're going to do to lower tax while nonetheless, looking after the people who need it most, how we're going to deal with an aging demographic, fewer people working compared to more people retired, all those things. You need to be able to answer it honestly, because we had people who got into power with a few glib remarks and a bit of general unpopularity for us. And the truth is, Labour inherited, it's worth saying, notwithstanding our
This is true, I know what you're going to say.
Labour inherited the fastest growing economy in the G7, inflation down to 2% on target, and 4 million more people in work. So I'm not one of those who always tries to suggest everything's perfect.
No, I'm not saying that's not right. But let me read you this, because
what Labour took, they've wrecked, and they didn't inherit a basket.
But your party's problem is not that. Let me read you a few texts, because you're good enough to come on, and this is how you and I do this stuff. This is from Bev in Hampshire. What a cheap shot from Graham Stewart, insulting not only Nigel Farage but also the Reform voters like me. He spoke about listening, but he showed he doesn't listen and just carried on talking. Exactly what people are sick to the back of teeth of with the Tories. Childish mudslinging. No wonder people are sick of the Tory party. Ray from Taunton. The last interviewee is proof that I will never vote for the Tories again, because he's just playing lip service and isn't putting anything in his place. Brad in Cambridge. And there is the perfect example why the Tories won't get in power. If you dismiss Nigel Farage, who speaks our language, you'll never get my vote again. That's what I was trying to say to you. I know that's just 3 people. What I'm trying to say is, I know you left the Labour Party with the fastest growing economy in the G7. I get that. I really do. I think that's not the issue. I think there's a lot about the Tories that made far more sense than Labour. But the British people, there's one important word, and I don't know how you get it back. You lost their trust. And when you say to me about Kemi taking her time, I always want to say to Tory MPs like yourself, you do realise while she's waiting to work out what needs to be said, other people like Reform are saying, whether you poo-poo that or not, that means they get a head start. I've heard nothing from Badenoch that really makes me think, yeah, come on, the Tories are turning the ship round. That's me being really honest with you, Graham.
Yeah, well, no, I hear you, and you were a Reform voter, and those 3, by the sounds of it, were as well, and we have to win them back. But we're not going to do it by being glibber than Nigel. I'm sorry, I'm not allowed to be disobliging about Nigel, but I find him singular. He's a brilliant communicator. I mean, he must be the best communicator in British politics today. But the only thing he's ever run in his life, Jeremy, is his mouth, and he does it brilliantly. And if people find that insulting, well, tough. Rupert Lowe, who's worked with him, what did he come to the conclusion? What has everyone who's ever worked with him over the years come to the same conclusion? So I'm not
sticking up for Farage as a human being. I'm not talking about Farage. I'm talking I would be the example, Graham. You know this, right?
Yeah.
I objected. I'll say it now. I never thought I would. I objected to the Conservative Party telling me that what I was brought up to believe in was far right. It wasn't. That's where I think you lost my trust. That's me being really honest as a voter. It wasn't about Farage. It was about somebody saying, do you know what? It's not racist to say that there's too many people come to this country. Not because I don't want to be a fair person, but because we can't afford even the interest in our debts and our own people are suffering. That's what I want from my government. I want passion and care about people, yes, starting at home. And I don't think it's wrong to say that, mate. That's all I'm saying, you know?
No. And I think that's exactly the direction that Kemi is taking the party. So if we can combine that with careful attention to detail, because, I mean, you know, I'm not going to talk about reform anymore. That's what we've got to do. And the truth is, Labour came in and they didn't have a lot of popularity. They got less than 34% of the votes. It's not a great starting point, but they did promise. I mean, you got to remember the number one promise, the number one mission was economic growth. Well, how have they done?
I get that, and smashing the gangs.
The number one promise was they wouldn't stick our taxes up. What have they done? Stuck our taxes up. They went to the farmers' conference and looked them in the eye and said, listen to us. We understand. We will protect you. What did they do? They stuffed the farmers.
And I could find you I could find you 5 examples of Keir Starmer saying council tax won't rise. I get all of that. Can I just ask you quickly, the civil service thing with Rachel Reeves, is it window dressing, or do you think it'll actually happen?
Well, I don't know. I mean, they say they're going to build 1.5 million houses. That's something else I would applaud the Labour government for. My God, desperately, we need houses, don't we? My children, other people's children, they're not in the same position that our generation was, Jeremy. You know, I could buy a house when I was in my mid-20s. Now, you know, you get a good job, you work hard, you study hard. You know, if we don't fix that, I'm surprised the young aren't angrier. I'm surprised they're not at my street surgery grabbing my lapel to say, for God's sake, why do I have to pay half my salary to live in a pretty pokey room in a shared house? So I really want to see them do that. I want to see them bring the civil service numbers down. I think those are the right things to do. The trouble is that they've got a track record of saying one thing and doing another, and they are in hot to the unions, which is why typically Labour governments, even the more moderate and sensible ones, end up with higher unemployment at the end than at the beginning, and they don't tend to bring the solutions, which is why it is up to the Conservative Party to put its hands up, exactly as you say, hopefully not come over if I did to the three people you mentioned as arrogant or whatever. I apologise.
You're not going to please all the people all the time.
No, you're not, exactly. The main thing is you know, try and tell the truth as best you can and wrestle with the issues and recognise that, you know, we lost last year. It's not even a year yet. We got hammered, absolutely hammered, because the British people decided against us. They gave Labour a chance, not with a huge vote of enthusiasm, but enough. And Labour have let them down. So
I couldn't agree with that. And I also say you're doing your job, I'm doing mine. You're good enough to come on. Two very, very quick questions. Are you happy with your pay rise? Is it 2.5% or $2.5 grand? Because somebody's written it wrong. What is it? 2.5%?
I just saw it just now that it's 2.8. Apparently, MPs are given the average of the public sector pay rise. I think that's about right. So we don't vote on it, contrary to what everyone says. There's nothing I can say about it that will make people hate us and say we're feathering our own pockets. They won't be happy until we're sucking gravel like the four Yorkshiremen. But the truth is, I think it's done independently. I don't get a vote. And it's basically linked to... He said
sucking gravel. I'd like to leave you... I mean, this is a respectful comment, Graham Stewart, Conservative MP for Beverley and Holderness. If you do find... a bit of advice from Jezza here. If you do find yourself in your constituency and you said you were surprised that people haven't come up to you and grabbed you by the throat and gone, this is outrageous. If you do get approached and people start getting angry, just don't do a Mike Amesbury. That's all I'm saying, my old friend, all right? Graham Stewart...
I'll try and make sure I'm sober anyway, Jeremy.
Oh, my God. Good man. Thank you, GS. Graham Stewart, Conservative MP for Beverley and Holderness. This is Talk Drive.
My understanding is whilst their backup power systems operated and protected some of the critical key systems within the airport, they did have to reconfigure some of the electricity supply. All the systems were turned off. They then had to start them again in a safe way. We have asked the National Energy Systems Operator to conduct a review of the incident and any wider lessons that might need to be learnt about energy resilience on our critical national infrastructure.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
About 5:28, we're live across the UK. Hello to Phil Dave, he does a marvellous job. He's just walked into the outside of Talk, looking very suave and sophisticated. He's ordered me a new earphone. 0344 419 1000 is our telephone number. Text to 87222. Thank you to Graham Stewart. He certainly got you going, didn't he? Brad says, does Graham really think that Kemi has what it takes? I left the Tory party before she became leader. I've seen absolutely nothing from her that wants me to go back. Jeremy in West Sussex, sneering at reform just makes me want to join them even more. That was Jeremy in West Sussex. Anthony and Selby, Jez, I am raging with that Tory MP who shows why they are forever unelectable now. Nothing has changed for me. The Tories are still treacherous and Labour is still anti-British. I will forever stick with reform. Jane says, unfortunately for the Tories, they won't get the lost voters back. Many will vote reform. Many of the others won't bother to vote. The trust has gone and don't feel there is anyone that really understands that in the Tory party. Hello to Stuart in Perthshire, eh? I'm afraid I'd prefer we had a Donald Trump than a Graham Stewart every day of the bleeding week and twice on Sundays. Grant Hotwood, just another Tory paying lip service to what he thinks we now want to hear. Too late, you had your chance and you bleed and blow it. Steve, brilliant show as usual. I think this was going to Mike Graham and then it arrived here. On a lighter note, tried to buy a pink shirt yesterday as my partner said they look good on you. The shop said, really sorry, we don't have any. I said, what? They said Jezza has them all. Oh, very funny. Yeah, well, pink. Apparently, wearing pink is a sign that you're very sure of your masculinity. Talking of which, we're just watching Donald Trump have a cabinet meeting, and our Jodie from Liverpool. This is what I would love. I would love to just play what's said in the background. Right? She said. We're watching, and I said, "Do you think he wears what sort of underwear do you think Donald Trump?" She said, "I think he wears really baggy Y fronts." In that accent. I said, right. So we're all looking at Trump now. And I said, what about Cameron? He wears really tight stuff. There you go, 5:30. I don't want to know. 0344 499. Of course he wears tight stuff. 0344 499 1000 is our telephone number. Text to 87222. It's been a while. We're delighted to have him back. Benedict Spence, Conservative commentator and generally good old egg. Oh, God, look, he's got the old sleeveless hunting top on. How are you, old boy?
This is quite a slim-fitting sleeveless hunting top if we're talking about sort of very tight-fitting clothes. I'm very well, thank you. How are you doing?
I'm watching this appalling show on Netflix called The Gentleman, which I don't even understand. I mean, he inherits this pile and becomes a drug dealer. And your front room looks very much like the grand drawing room from the massive house. It looks very regal behind you, Spence.
I'll have to watch that. Have you seen that Netflix has done an adaptation of The Leopard? That's what I was going for. A sort of Sicilian-style, very grandiose period piece. That's what I was hoping for.
I didn't throw that point together because I wanted to start slightly differently. Disney's live-action remake of Snow White has seriously underperformed. This is a shock. The movie recast the classic elements of the story in a progressive light, Benedict Spence, including ditching the popular songs, including Whistle While You Work, because that could offend people who don't have a job. Replacing the Seven Dwarfs, apparently you can't say that, with reimagined groups of magical creatures, because that would be heightist or sexist or whatever. And they scrapped the entire sexist romance plot, because why would a woman want to fall in love anyway? She just wants to rule the world, and it would be wrong to make that out. The box office figures for a film that cost millions, an absolute disaster. And it even scored 44 on Rotten Tomatoes. I've no idea what that means. It's been panned by the critics. Have you been to see it? Are you going to see it? Would you like to make a comment about Snow Broke, as we're calling it here?
I was not planning on going to see it. I might go and see it now just to look at how bad it is. It might make me feel better about how the country is going. You see, this is even worse, possibly. But beyond that, no, I wasn't particularly planning to. But this is the latest sort of live-action remake, isn't it? They've done... What is it? They've done The Jungle Book, they've done The Lion King, where they're trying to, resell these things for a sort of a modern audience. And the problem is, A, they've already done them, they already exist, everybody knows the story, and B, they're trying to sort of shoehorn social justice agendas into these things. A good 4 or 5 years, I think, after most members of the public kind of went, do you know what, we're a bit over this now. Yes. This is very tired, this is very stolid, and we're not interested.
I mean, I'm so with you. You'd be amazed, wouldn't you? So, I mean, an organisation like Disney, you think would have the handle £360 million to make something that's that woke. It just doesn't work. Talking of which, in your drawing room, You will. I know exactly what you're going to say, but I'm going to say it anyway. Rachel Reeves, or Rachel Thieves, or Richard III, as I've started calling her with Mike from Plank, risking the wrath of her paymasters, the unions, talking about upwards of 50,000 potential civil service job cuts. Now, I only have 2 points to make, and I'd love your take on this. If the Labour Party, who are in hock to the unions, can find potentially 50,000 people being paid by the taxpayer for doing a job that isn't relevant, how many bloody ones actually are there? And the second point is, why hasn't this been dealt with before? Because this is window dressing. Why didn't the Tories get rid of it? Why are people scared of the blob, Benedict?
Well, first and foremost, why didn't the Tories do it? Because the Tories were useless. Right now, we've got that out of the way.
Yeah.
We just remind ourselves, whenever you think wistfully about how much better things used to be, no, they weren't that great. They were useless. But you're right to say, actually, how bad must things actually be if even a Labour government is going, wow, there is a lot of waste going on here. A lot of people who don't need to be working here. There are a lot of people, frankly, stealing a living. And we saw this also, didn't we, when it came to the proposed cuts to things like incapacity benefits and out-of-work benefits and all that sort of thing. You know, when it's a Labour government, which is built on people for whom social justice is in their veins, if even they are sat there going, boy, are you people really pulling a fast one. Yeah. That shows you how bad this is. So, fine, listen to the union saying, oh, this is terrible, and listen to all the charities saying, oh, it's dreadful that they're cutting the money. We already know that the country's finances are in a dreadful state. Yes. Something must be done. And if they can identify that much waste that even they can't explain away, that tells you how much of a pickle we're in.
It's just absolutely outrageous. I mean, I don't think it'll happen. But it does say an awful lot. And you hear reform. I've heard Richard Tice say, if we got into government day one, we'd attack the blob. I was asking earlier, and I can broaden this out to the ECHR. I think the British people have had enough. And you talk about financially we're not in a great place. We can't even afford the interest on the debts we've got. This country is screwed. And I think the reason why so many people are getting more and more angry about migration, and I know the bedwetters will say, oh, well, the poor people. Yes, there are people, there are refugees, very happy to do that. But it's a bit, to me, I was saying earlier, Benedict, it's a bit like we've always revered the NHS, right? We daren't criticise it. The truth of the matter is the ECHR, and Harry Cole, I wrote this down because I thought it was one of the greatest lines ever, said that the ECHR means that we are still outsourcing control of so much about what this country should be making its own decisions on, and we're being screwed in the process. We are allowing left-wing lawyers to defend... I mean, what was this today? An illegal Iraqi migrant who fled his home because he basically... Massive exam fraud, screwed people over, made lots. He can't go back, apparently, because he says a gang smuggler threw away his ID and phone. So he can't go. And then another one, an Albanian criminal today... He's used the ECHR. He can't go home because his son's got autism and the journey would stress him out. Honestly, Benedict, it's
that last one sent me. The journey would stress us on out. Oh well, you should have thought of that, shouldn't you? Honestly, I mean, it's that thing though, isn't it? When people hear a lot of this, a lot of Europhiles, they turn around and they go, "Well, Brexit's been a disaster, hasn't it?" And then you look at how much the ECHR has the country in a stranglehold, and you go, "What is it exactly we're meant to have left? We haven't taken back control. We haven't got sovereignty." And again, I'll go back and say, "And who was it who oversaw this and allowed this to be the case?" That would be the Conservatives.
Yep.
But it's true. The ECHR and our, the very fact that we've got Keir Starmer talking about trying to get even greater alignment with the European Union.
Yeah, because he's a globalist and a human rights lawyer, and it's his Bible, isn't it?
Well, he's a globalist. Is he really, though? This is the thing. All of these people, they say that they're globalists, that they're outwards, they're internationalists, but they're not interested in doing great deals with the United States, the actual driver of growth in the world, are they? Because that mean old Donald Trump, he says some bad things, man. Yeah, it's vibes. It's a lie, the whole idea that they are broad-minded and internationalists. They're not actually interested in progress. It's because it was a nice little club, and they got to feel good about it. And as the end of empire, the sense of importance dissipated. But if we're inside Europe, we feel like we're part of something more important. And we get to appear to be internationalist and broad-minded. And it also helps that we can go visa-free to Tuscany or wherever it is on a holiday every year. But that's the point. We're part of this club, and it gives us a sense of importance. Whereas in reality, everyone in Europe is being dragged down, sinking to the bottom, just a little bit more slowly every year. And the difference is, if you were truly globalist and international, you'd be looking to other countries that actually are growing. But we don't want to do that because, Orange Man bad and all that.
Mate, I completely agree. I ask you this, though, and I can't put it as eloquently as you. I'm looking for... I don't care what your political persuasion. I think the British people... When Trump stood and said, I'll make you safer, better off, more respected... Yes, Orange Man, baby, I get all that, right? But Kemi Benedict's apparently working out where the Tories went wrong. Nigel uses the words, there's all the problems at the moment with reform. Labour seem hell-bent on destroying any small business, in fact anything, despite the fact that their number one priority is growth. Don't know how that works. But I just get the feeling, and I've sat here for 3 years, the British people were very disillusioned with politics, and I don't think they're undisillusioned. That's not a word, but I know what I'm saying. What I do think they are now is they're not going to be taken for fools anymore, and I think it's basic maths. We are... What did Graham Stewart say? We don't want to be seen to be mean. No. It's not about being seen mean. We are skint, right? We are skint, and I would challenge any politician, Benedict, to go... Explain to freezing pensioners or veterans who can't find a home or farmers, explain to them why you're wiping the backside of people who arrive here and get a 4-star hotel and these people can't get anything. It doesn't make sense to the British people.
It doesn't make sense, and what sort of makes it worse is that, of course, lots of people point out that many countries are signatories to the ECHR, but not all of them have the same problems that we do, because they just ignore the bits they don't care about.
We're always doing the right thing, aren't we? But doing the right thing in this instance, in my mind, the British right thing, is to the detriment of our own people. That's what I think.
Yeah, it is. And do you know what? Actually, here I'm probably going to upset a bit of your audience here, because you were talking about how useless Labour are and how useless the Tories are. They are. I was really irritated, actually, when Nigel Farage was talking about deportation and, how it's impossible to deport people in the numbers that people are talking about. Let's take the morality out of the equation, whether or not you want to deport many people or not many people. Take that out of the equation. It was the very classic British status, oh, that can't possibly be done, it's very difficult. And I was just sat there going, so what is it exactly that you are offering? What's different about you if you're just going to sit there and go, oh, sounds a bit different, it sounds a bit difficult, and sounds like hard work. I'm sat there going, hang on, Nigel Farage, aren't you supposed to be the person who's offering the can-do?
Well, that was the argument. That was the argument with the low thing, because because people were saying, is Nigel Farage moving a little bit to the centre to hoover up the votes that he would need to win, whilst in the meantime alienating certain members of Reform, voters who are thinking you're moving away from the very reason we believed in what you were saying. That's his issue, is it not? But I believe you should stay... there was do you know, about a week after Donald Trump got elected, sorry, I shouldn't laugh, somebody will complain, there were pictures of people on the Mexican border crying. And this woman was on the television and she was going, there's no point in trying. Donald Trump won't let us in. Yes, because that's what he said he was going to do. And that's what the American people voted for, whether you agree with the Orange Man, baby, or not. That's what I want from my politicians. Not, we'll smash the gangs. No, you ain't coming in because we can't afford you.
The first thing to say to those people is, well, why don't you try and come legally? That might be a start. Then you wouldn't run the risk of being deported for being here illegally. But, I mean, the problem is, you're talking about, Nigel Farage trying to move to the centre to hoover up votes. But he's already staggeringly popular not in the centre. Why does he need to move? The centre, trying to be in the centre, is what did for the Conservatives. It's what killed them. And the problem is, if you decide then, I'm going to drift to the centre to try and appeal to, I don't know, disaffected Lib Dems or whatever, sooner or later, Kemi Badenoch is toast. Let's just be clear. She's not going to make the next general election.
And what's this? I'm not going to say anything until I work it out. How long does it take you to work it out, love?
Exactly. So who is it going to be? If the Tories really do want to kill themselves, if they want to commit harry-kiri, they might select somebody like a James Cleverly. But if they want to win, they'll probably go for somebody like a Robert Jenrick. Do you think Robert Jenrick is going to move to the centre? No. What makes him popular right now amongst a lot of grassroots Tories is that he is out-Faraging Farage. He's being firmer on these things than Farage is. He's not interested in going, oh, well, mustn't upset The Guardian, must be in the centre unless Channel 4 News says something mean about me. No. He's going hell for leather in a certain direction, and whether you like it or not, that is the popular direction. That is the route to electoral victory.
Completely agree. Listen, it's great to have you back. Jackie in Bournemouth says, it's so nice to see Benedict on your show, Jeremy. I love this man. Jacqueline from Bournemouth. Okay, I don't know whether she's in care, but anyway, she's probably having therapy. But anyway, it's good to have you back, BS. BS! He's called BS! Never mind, get off. 0344 499 1000. This is Store Drive.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Back 5:45, we're live across the UK. This is JK on Drive. Thanks for tuning in. 0344 499 1000. Love having Benedict Spence on. Calls in a tick. Lash. Brilliant. Jez, I love your passion. I work hard. I pay a stupid amount in tax. I get called lucky for what I've achieved. I call it graft. Why is it when I need the help after my daughter got dropped from height in a failing school, causing her to get a concussion, whiplash and nerve damage in her back, I have to wait months for an appointment in the failing NHS? Luck. The only lucky people are the layabout dole grifters and immigrants. I feel forgotten. I feel taken advantage of. Claire, you know what, Jez? These civil service cuts, the jobs that will be going will be the, as they see it, the old school non-work 9 to 5, non-woke 5-day-a-week office jobs worth. You mark my words, it's not going to happen. Susie, me and me hubby have just come back from Westfield, Stratford City. We spent most of our time dealing with beggars, dodging scooters and bikes and avoided being hit by cars, speeding in what is a 20-mile-an-hour borough. I've just about had enough of this country. Hang with it. Danny from Sheppey, I went to prison there. For the day to make a television programme. Please stop calling the Chancellor Rachel Thieves. With the mess she's made of the economy, she should be called Rachel from Petty Cash. Love it. Mike's in Sussex. What, Graham? No. I need help. I agree with everything you say and massively want reform to win any upcoming elections. However, my big concern is how will they will defeat the legal system that seems to challenge anything common sense or right, as well as political reform. We need legal reform to break down this horrendous legal system that blocks, stalls and manipulates many situations and scenarios. Really? Eddie's in Preston, great show. I wouldn't trust that Tory fellow as far as I could throw him. Overplaying apologetic sympathy from the Tories. Sorry, mate. Never vote you lot again. You had 14 years and you hit up. 14 minutes to 6 o'clock to the phone lines. We'll go to East Yorkshire. Steve, you're on Talk Drive. How are you, son?
I'm all right. How are you?
Not too bad for a balding, nigh on 60-year-old has-been. What's happening, son?
Well, I'm absolutely fed up with this country. You know, all my life I've voted Tory. You know, I was brought up to actually vote Labour, and I didn't agree with it because I could see what a mess they were made. I've lived through Labour governments. I've lived through 3-day weeks. I've lived through blackouts. I've lived through Gordon Brown, you know, sending us down the river with the brass.
Yeah.
And now the clowns are doing it again, and I'm just fed up. For the first time in my life, I've not really been a political person, but I gave Nigel Farage my 25 quid just because I wanted somebody to hear my voice. You know, I know thousands of people like me who are just completely fed up with the way that this country's been run. You know, and if I had a choice to pack my bags and leave, my God, I think I'd do it.
How old are you, bud?
I'm 65.
Yeah.
I'm coming up to retirement, and everything they're doing now is screwing me over for all the money that I've put away over 50 years of work nearly. When I left school at 16 with no education whatsoever, and I've had to graft hard to earn some brass, bring up a family, pay my mortgage off, and all of that malarkey. And crikey, I'm so angry. I get so passionate about this. They're just not listening to anybody. They sit there in their, I call them their ivory towers, you know, sponging off us, spending our money, you know, and you hear of all these flipping goodies they get. I had to sign a new contract the other day, and in my contract there was a anti-bribery clause, and I can't even accept anything over £25 without it being put back to the company. And, you know, I'd get the sack if I'd gone to £600 worth of, you know, some concert.
What do you think the answer is, very quickly, Steve?
God, I wish I knew. I really do.
I want honesty in politics. I want a politician to stand up and say, listen, warts and all, before you want to write stories, this is what I've done. I've made a few mistakes. I've been married twice. Whatever. Do you know what? I did this when I was 16 or 18 or whatever. Here's what I'm going to tell you, right? Bit like Trump. This is what I think. If you vote for me, I'll do it on day one. I don't care who wants to block me. I don't care who gives me grief. I'm not bothered about the legal side. I do it, right? Because that's what you ask for. I'll take you on the journey. It might work, it might not. But if that's what you vote for, I will do do that for you. I don't see that. I see all these people getting elected and then they just roll over and die. And manifestos mean absolutely jack, and that's not the point, is it?
I don't like people who lie to me. And it's even worse when they're lying to me and taking my money, you know, that I've worked hard for, you know.
But listen, keep the faith, buddy. And who do you support football-wise?
Well, I'm not really a football supporter, but in my youth, you know, growing up, I was a Leeds supporter.
That's why you're depressed. It's been lovely having you on, Steve, in East Yorkshire. We love you. Keep listening and keep the faith, me old son. This is Talk Drive.
My understanding is whilst their backup power systems operated and protected some of the critical key systems within the airport, they did have to reconfigure some of the electricity supply. All the systems were turned off. They then had to start them again in a safe way. We have asked the National Energy Systems Operator to conduct a review of the incident and any wider lessons that might need to be learnt about energy resilience on our critical national infrastructure.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back, 7 minutes to 6. We're live across the UK. This is JK on Drive. If you want to be on, we'll do sport in a second, but I have to do something far more important. Ollie Bolly and Risty Rue are watching the television right now. I love you. I miss you. I'll see you very soon. Push the button, will you, for goodness sake, woman.
Sport Summary on Talk.
Oh, yeah. Put his face on screen. Put his face on screen. Go on, put his face on screen. You've got some front, you have. You've got some front. I picked you from obscurity and gave you a job. And then when you can't face the flack, you take a week off without my permission. The last thing I said to you on this show 10 days ago was the following. As a Liverpool fan, I said you'll be out of the Champions League and then on Sunday you'll be beaten by Newcastle in the Carabao Cup. That's what I said to you. And even Ryan on the Sunday went, my God, you're so good with your predictions. Where have you been for a week? No grief, you've been hiding, Ellard. You're a disgrace, man.
No, not hiding, but on TalkSport every single day. Haven't been able to do this show due to my lack of availability. Yeah. But Jez, I wasn't hiding. I'll look you in the eye right now and I'll say fair play. You put your neck on the line and you got to big prediction, spot on. And that's the beauty of football. I didn't think it was going to happen. I thought we'd have too much to get past PSG and Newcastle, and I was wrong. So I wasn't hiding, JK. You know, I know you
All
think
right,
that
we'll let you off.
Me some obscurity,
I had a very tall bloke on. I don't know why I'm doing that. He was very. What was he called? He was called Max. He was brilliant.
Oh, Max, yeah, he's kind of the new toy at the moment, the next best thing that everyone's tipping for glory. So, you know, you're probably much better off with him, JK, than me, to be fair.
To be honest, he actually paid us to come on, so that was good. Right, listen, 5-6. England-Latvia tonight. After England-Albania. I hate these international breaks. I miss my football.
Know.
Thomas Tuchel. I read something really interesting that Paul Merson said today. You're not going to win the World Cup playing Premier League football. Is Tuchel the right man? What did you make of it? It wasn't great against Albania. It wasn't any different, was it?
It was a hard game to make sense of, because the game on Friday night, Albania put 10 men literally, on the edge of the box for the whole game. And it's like a training drill, wasn't it? You know, you try and break us down, and you kind of sat there and I'm thinking, do I see anything different? Do you see any patterns? And it was kind of hard to kind of take anything from that game when you got 10 lads on the edge of the box and you're just passing. I think tonight's going to be similar. But this is one of the problems that he's going to have, Jeremy, is pretty much all of his games before the World Cup are going to be qualifiers against teams that are not very good. So he's not going to have many chances to play against teams that want to press you high up the pitch. So, unfortunately, I think tonight is going to be a pretty similar game. We can have 80% of possession, be patient. And, yeah, it was hard to kind of take anything from that game on Friday night in terms of ideas, things he's trying to implement, because it's just pass against 10 lads who are parking the bus, you know?
Presumably it's on TalkSport. 7:45?
Yes, tonight, yes.
Is that you or is that Sam Matterson?
No, Max Scott's, no, it's not me tonight. No, you got the dream team there, Jim Proudfoot and Stuart Pearce. How great is it, JK, as well, to see Stuart Pearce again fit and healthy and back on commentary duty. So that's wonderful to see.
Scotland, this is a quote from Ryan. Scotland did what Scotland also did last night and let themselves down and let it slip. An embarrassing night. They were relegated to Nations League B. Doesn't mean anything to me. Even John McGinn said they were crap.
What? Relegated to what?
Nations League B, is that right?
Oh, is that still a thing? Is that still something that FIFA are trying to implement?
Apparently.
No, let's move on from that. An embarrassing night. There were quotes from John McGinn. They did lead 1-0 from the first leg against Greece, but they were really, really poor last night, losing 3-0 on the night. I managed to catch the highlights, and to be fair, in the last kind of few years, Steve Clarke and Scotland have been a better Scotland team than what we've been used to in previous years. They're much better at getting to major tournaments. They've got a lot of, I think, a much better team now, the likes of John McGinn, Scott McTominay, Billy Gilmore in that team, Andy Robertson. But yeah, last night they were poor, they were sloppy, hammered by Greece, so they won't get promoted to Nations League A. They're going to stay in Nations League B, which means it's not as good as Nations League A.
Whoever put relegated to Nations League B is wrong. Technically, I'll deal with that. When I used to do breakfast, you and I used to...
not true, I should say, by the way. They're not... Yeah, that's not true.
You're wrong. He said... Ryan says they're in A and they've been relegated. He says it's not surprising that Max is better than you because you don't know your facts.
No, so I now said they're in Nations League B, didn't I?
Oh, I see. Anyway, listen, you and I used to argue about Emma Raducanu, the most overrated tennis player in the world. Everybody's getting excited.
Argue. You used to just slag her off, and I used to tell you...
Oh, she's through to the last 16 of the Miami Open. Oh, yeah, because her opponent felt sick and gave up. Boring.
Yeah, also, she was dominant and needed just 30 minutes to take the first set 6-1. She had come into the tournament, 5 defeats from 6, lost a coach, yet Raducanu...
Lost a coach, lost 14 coaches in about a week, mate. Nobody wants to work with her.
Raducanu. Yeah. I mean, the performance like that yesterday, Jez, it was a great reason. It showed everyone why she won a major as a teenager. The timing was unmatched. The return of serve was lethal. Pure striking, forehand, backhand. Here's one for you. Raducanu is back.
Here's one for you. In the first 11 tournaments in the US PGA Golf Tour, 8 of them have been won by Europeans. This September is the Ryder Cup. It's in America. It's at Bethpage Black, one of the most difficult courses. I'm going to make you a prediction. Luke Donald wins the Ryder Cup in Italy against all odds, against the strongest American team ever. We have not won in the United States for decades. I believe that the Europeans are going to beat the Americans in the Ryder Cup in September. That is my prediction.
Wow, I like it. I tell you what, you've gone early on that one on Monday. But hey, listen, after your prediction with Liverpool, PSG, Newcastle, I'm all for it. I'm just going to agree with you.
I'd
now on
also
everything you
fire
said. I agree.
Arnie Slot if it was down to me. He'd be gone. It was an embarrassing performance.
Can we get a JK prediction tonight? Who's scoring the first goal for England tonight?
England tonight win 3-0 against Latvia. 3-0.
First goal scorer?
Harry Kane. Jude Bellingham will be on the score sheet as well.
All right, there we go.
Can I just say, when you were great today, but that top against the wall washes you out. You look really ill. Go and see a doctor. We'll see you tomorrow. Thank you very much indeed. The amazing Sam Allard is back on Talk Drive, and we, my friends, will do the news at 6. That's next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Before we get back on drive to, I don't know, diversity, Snow White, the civil service cuts and the ECHR. You know, when you wouldn't know this, but when you're doing this, right, so you sit and things sort of, you listen sometimes, but there's all sorts of... Did somebody just say a sheep has died of bird flu? Has any bird ever died of sheep flu? Jodie's got a theory. I'm going to try and work out whilst to read this bit how I'm going to describe it. But the world's first case of bird flu in sheep has been found in the UK. The nation's chief veterinary officer has confirmed the spokesman and said the single infected sheep has been humanely culled and no further cases amongst the flock were found after extensive testing. So how does a sheep get bird flu? How does a... Jodie thought that it was because the sheep was messing around. But I mean, I don't know whether that's fair. I don't know whether how you would describe sheep. I don't know. But I mean, how does the bird... Did the bird land on the sheep? Or did the sheep take the bird out? Oh, my God, I don't know what I'm doing. 0344, well, I do, badly. 0344 499 1000 is my telephone number for Talk Drive. We're here until 7 o'clock. You can, of course, WhatsApp us via WhatsApp on the same number, and then you can leave a voice note, 0344 499 1000. Also, you could indeed send us a text message, which would be lovely, 87222. Start your message with the word talk. So a sheep gets bird flu, but no bird gets sheep flu. That's because the sheep are too busy having fun. I'll let you fill in the blanks. Actually, no, don't. Let's get back to it. 6:05. There's only one person I want to speak to on a Monday. In fact, there's one person I want to speak to every evening at 6 o'clock, but sadly, I can't ring her when I'm not at work. Isabel Oakeshott, good evening.
Hi. Well, I mean, humans get bird flu, don't they? And, well, I think they do. And humans also get swine flu. So I don't think this is that weird that sheep get bird flu.
No, but it's what Jodie said, what the sheep were up to get the flu.
I can't imagine what you could possibly be talking about.
I'm going to look you straight in the eyes, Oakeshott. You know exactly what I'm saying, and that's what I love about you. Don't lie. Listen, so much to talk to you about. Can I start slightly differently, if it's OK? I don't know what you've been doing this weekend, but I wanted to ask whether you were considering, with the Tice Man or not, or with the children, are you going to see Disney's live-action remake of Snow White?
Well, I actually think one of my kids has been to it, and
No.
I've yet to get the lowdown. The particular child concerned is a bit too young to get involved in all the politics that have enmeshed this film. But having read about all the ridiculous goings on and little people complaining that they're not actually cast as the dwarfs, and apparently that's discriminating against little people because they don't get many opportunities to play dwarfs in big hit films. And then we've got the differences of views on Israel and Gaza amongst leading characters. I mean, the whole thing has been an absolute PR.
Just to give you an idea, and I need you to, before the end of the week, I need you to speak to said child and find out. This movie has cost $350 million. It's an absolute joke. Nobody's watching it. They call it progressive. Progressive. So what they did was they ditched popular songs like Whistle While You Work, and I want to tell you why that is, because that indeed would be discriminatory and could upset people who haven't got a job. What a load of honestly. Replace the 7 dwarfs with a reimagined group of magical creatures, because saying small and that's rude. Scrapping the entire sexist romantic plot, because what right do we have to say that Snow White would fall in love with a man? She could be a lesbian. She could be a man. She could have a penis. That's what we're talking about here. Madness.
I mean, I'm only amazed they didn't rename the film Snow Grey or Snow Rainbow or something like that.
Or Cocaine Rainbow would have been good, wouldn't it? I mean, that's dreadful.
Right there, wasn't there?
Isabel Oakeshott talks international, which is always an absolute pleasure and never a chore. Let's start with the obvious one today. Rachel Thieves, Richard III, Rachel from Accounts, has made it known that potentially tomorrow, and I think Starmer today said, we will take some money out of the government. Rachel reads, to risk the wrath of her paymasters, the unions, there could be cuts of up to 50,000 civil service jobs. And my only question to you, in fact, throughout the show has been this. If the Labour Party, who are financed and are in hock to the unions, can find 50,000 people that are doing useless jobs in Whitehall, how many are there? And to me, it's a window dressing. Why wasn't this dealt with before? There must be hundreds of thousands of people doing jobs that aren't relevant.
Well, I think there's about 650,000 civil servants, one way or another, at the moment. I might not have that figure quite right because it fluctuates massively. And I mean, if they manage to axe 50,000, then whoopee-doo, that's great. The thing is, I just don't actually believe it's going to happen.
No, I agree.
This is a government that has an absolute track record of making an awful lot of noise about things that they're going to do and delivering the square root of nothing. To give you a couple of examples, they're going to stop the boats, apparently, or rather they're going to smash the vile people smuggling gangs. In fact, what's happened is thousands and thousands of additional people have come over and no criminal gangs have been smashed whatsoever. All the fuss that was last week, all the headlines about cutting benefits, well, I mean, that's just a green paper. It's just ideas at this point. And I don't know how whether you were actually listening to the whole of that statement, but it included an awful lot of increases to benefits. So I don't think any of that's going to make any difference either. So the idea that they're going to actually take the axe to the very bloated civil service is a good one in principle, but I've just not got any real faith that it'll actually happen.
It's unbelievable, though, for me. I mean, they're already saying that this woman's incompetent and could be axed, and Starmer might have to get rid of her. But it is quite frightening. I mean, this government. But the other thing on today, I mean, we sort of made it a broader conversation because you know me, I can't plan anything. We ended up talking about the ECHR, which I know Nigel Farage has come out and said he would leave. I just put the question earlier. I was like, I don't understand. Harry Cole came up with a great quote, Isabel. He said that while allowing the ECHR for us to still be members, and, you know, there's people who go, well, Churchill, but that was 70 years ago. He said we are outsourcing control of so much of what this country does. And the whole idea of leaving Brexit was to get control back. And I think he's absolutely right. The ECHR, to me, is a bit like the NHS. It's sort of revered from 70 years ago. Only Belarus and Russia. That's rubbish. Other countries just ignore it if they choose to. I don't understand this obsession with it. I don't understand. I mean, we've had it. I don't know if you listen to Mike in the morning. It's brilliant. He's got a migrant of the day story. Brilliant.
Oh, yeah.
Today we've got the illegal Iraqi migrant who fled his home over an alleged exam fraud, made millions. He's avoided deportation after claiming a people smuggler threw away his phone and his ID card. But my personal favourite is there's the Albanian criminal, Isabel, he's managed to get his deportation granted overturned on human rights grounds as his son had a learning disability. So we're paying lefty lawyers to use the ECHR to allow people to stay in this country while screwing our own people.
So if you carried out a poll of a big sample of people in Britain, the vast majority of them, I would imagine, wouldn't actually be able to tell you what the ECHR is, what do those letters stand for, and why, you know, if they were asked, do you want to get rid of it, they probably wouldn't know the answer. But if you explain to them what this treaty does, our membership of this treaty, prevents us from actually getting rid of all manner of hardened criminals and people who should not be in our country. If you asked people in our country, would you like to scrap this law so that we could get rid of people that have no right to be in our country and have broken the law in the most serious and grave way? I reckon you'd find the vast majority of British people would support that move. It's only the chin-stroking intelligentsia from their armchairs in Islington that have a problem with leaving the ECHR, somehow imagining that will immediately plunge the UK into the abyss of human rights abuses that will somehow rank alongside despotic regimes from, you know, all the worst parts of the most deprived and troubled parts of Africa.
Stop there for 1 second. Let me ask you, because you know so much, and that is such a great way to describe it. This fear amongst this ideological left that if we dare to say, hold on a second, can we actually make our own decisions about, you know, criminals and people taking the PISS out of the United Kingdom? By the way, we're skint. Why don't politicians, I know Nigel's announced it, but why don't other politicians go, let me get this right. The British people, and I've been saying it all day, we can't afford to even pay the interest on the debts we've got, right? Our public services are crumbling. We can't afford to do right by pensioners, I've said it all day, but farmers, ex-servicemen and women, and yet we're still wiping the backside of other people and making people have excuses to stay and doing all of this. Why don't politicians go, do you know what, if I carry on like this, whether or not that's apparently what my conscience is telling me, I'm going to be ousted? Because the British people, they're not racist or outrageous or unfair. They're just saying, could you look after me first? Because I've sort of paid for it and I feel like I'm at the back of the queue. And I don't think politicians are listening, Isabel. I really don't. Because to me, I sit here every day. It's plain, sorry, using that, it's plain common sense, isn't it?
It is such common sense, and I think that many of our listeners will just not understand why most of our politicians don't seem to.
No, I don't understand, and I don't understand. Do you understand?
We can't be, as Great Britain, we cannot be the kind of resort for all peoples of the world that need looking after. Or including our own people who don't actually want to work but could work. We cannot continue asking a shrinking number of people who are working ever harder to support all of this charity, whether it's charity for asylum seekers and economic migrants and so on, or whether it's charity for people that don't actually need it in our own country. We can't keep doing this. The whole country is being dragged down by it. And this Labour government is so much worse than I ever thought possible in their inability to see this.
It's really, you know what's happened now. Every time you come on, people start ringing. Can I speak to you and Isabel? Let's go to Cambridgeshire, if you don't mind, Ms. Oakeshott. Chris, good evening. You're through to myself and Isabel Oakeshott. What would you like to say?
For starters, it's lovely to speak to her. She's wonderful.
Oh.
But the point being...
Nothing about me, then.
Sorry? Well, you're not so bad yourself, really. But you're a bit young.
I beg your pardon? What did you say?
Well, I'm 77.
Oh, Christ, I'm feeling great about my life. I've got 18 years on you.
Young.
Right, get Isabel on the screen. I need to see her face. Go on, Chris, shoot.
Well, the point is that you're talking about the Kemi Badenoch and all the rest of it a little while ago. I don't see any way, while that poor lady is in charge, that the Conservatives will ever get back in. And as regards to the MP that you had on there, he is talking as if he sits there and does nothing for the remainder of the next 3 years, they'll sit there and pick up the pieces at the end of the Labour period, and he won't have to do a thing to get it.
Isabel, you might have been busy earlier. This was Graham Stewart, who shocked a few people by saying, listen, there's a good chance we'll win in 4 years, and Kemi's just keeping her head down. I'm not saying an awful lot, and with the greatest respect, Farage, with how many people he's got, 4 or 5 in his party at the moment, and all those people will realise it's just a con. And I went, hold on a minute, mate, what you're saying to 4.5 million people is, and I was the person who was voting Tory all my life, but suddenly I was not going to be told that what I considered were Tory values were far right. That's why I voted for reform. And I said to Graham Stewart, you will alienate a lot of people if you speak like that. Sounds like he alienated you, Chris, in Cambridge, yes?
It's quite simple. He's typical in that he sat and spoke an awful lot of words, but said absolutely nothing.
My screen says that you were canvassed by the Tories at the weekend.
Yes, we were.
Wow, tell us. Share with me and Isabel what happened.
I'm trying to think of who it was. What's his name? What? Who came round at the weekend?
Oh, his wife's there. Doesn't matter who was there.
Robert Jenrick.
Oh, Jenrick came round to see you, did he?
Actually round our estate.
Oh, nice.
And one of his canvassers came in, and I had a good chat with him.
And
I told him exactly what I just told you. And it's basically, what I said to him was, with Kemi Badenoch, her biggest problem is that she may be beautiful, she may be lovely and wonderful, all the rest of it. I've got nothing whatsoever against her. But she is not a leader in the sense that when she stands at the box, she can ask Starmer anything she wants. And all he does is make a joke of her.
What do you think, Isabel? Isabel?
I think lots of things. I mean, Chris, actually, I'm really impressed that Robert Jenrick knocked on your door. And there's something quite significant about that you probably know, which is that Mr. Jenrick, I think, is one of the good guys. I don't have a lot good to say about the Tories, but I think that he is closer to what I am campaigning for and what so many of our listeners want than many other people in the Conservative Parliamentary Party at the moment. And that guy is absolutely working his socks off at the moment. Why? Because I think within the wider Conservative Party, there's a realisation that Kemi Badenoch is not up to it. I would put a very significant amount of money on her not surviving anywhere near till the next election as party leader. And I think there's a good chance that Robert Jenrick will take over from her. But if he doesn't, and they choose another kind of wet lefty as leader, then they're absolutely stuffed. And for them
I'll go further, Isabel Oakeshott. I don't think she'll make it till next summer, and I don't think that they will have the balls to vote for Robert Jenrick. I think they'll go back to the centrist James Cleverly, and then there will be a question to answer, because I'm with you. You know, and I'm not trying to stir up a hornet's nest here. We've seen recently Nigel and the problems with Rupert Lowe. Robert Jenrick is as vocal at the moment, if not more so than Farage, about some of the things that people want to see. His natural home, I would suspect, is very much reform unless the Tories change course. But that would be interesting, wouldn't it?
Well, I don't think that's impossible, that if he felt that he couldn't really stick with the party under this leadership, or if he failed to get the leadership himself, I don't think it's impossible that he would come over to Reform. And obviously I have an interest in Reform. I'm not a member, but my partner is the deputy leader, so I just want to be right up front about that. But if the Tories underestimate Reform, and Reform will have plenty of problems, you know, I don't want to say that Reform's going to just cruise into power like some great big juggernaut. It's not going to be easy. They've only got a handful of MPs. But let's see what happens at the end of this week when they've got a massive rally planned, the like of which no other party has attempted or probably could pull together for a very, very long time. Many thousands of people coming to that. And I think that will be very interesting to watch. But it's not going to be easy. And the local council elections are going to be a big test for Reform.
Do you think, just taking that point, thank you, Chrissy Cobus, do you think taking that point, Isabel, not trying to put you on the spot, because we both believe in the same thing, but do you think that, and I try and listen to all sides, right? Do you think that, say that happened and somebody like Jenrick, quality politician, would he ever survive? Does Nigel, genuine question, we've heard about the Rupert thing, maybe, does he have it in his locker to have people like Jenrick on board as part of the team? Or is there a problem with, if you like, allowing other people to have some of the limelight? Put that to you.
Let me put it really simply. Nigel Farage wants to be Prime Minister, and you can't be Prime Minister without a cabinet.
Absolutely.
And in that case, you're going to need the best people, the most talented people you can get. And it's very unfortunate that we've lost some talent. I mean, Ben Habib, for example, somebody that I actually admired. I think, by the way, that he may stand in this Runcorn by-election that's coming up, and it'll be interesting to see.
Is that Mike Amesbury's seat?
Yeah.
Well, you think Ben Habib will?
I think there's a possibility that he will stand there. You'll have to ask him, because I know he comes on our often on our station. Let's see what he says. Maybe I've got that wrong, but I think it's something that he might consider. And if he does that, well, could that take away votes from Reform? It might do. But I don't think that anything is going to stop the momentum that Reform is gathering, unless the other parties stop doing all the things that you and I have been talking about. You know, every time they make these stupid decisions or they fail to do the things that people want, that just plays into the hands of opposition parties, whether it's Reform or any of the other opposition.
Somebody said to me, good mate of mine, Rob, we were talking about it last night. I was going to say this to you. I didn't mean to make it all about Reform, but it's interesting because we're talking about the political landscape. He said that what was really interesting was the Tories lost trust and that Labour got in this massive majority despite the fact they only got 34% of the vote, and they promised all these things, and patently within 10 months it's absolute BS, and that they haven't done what they said they were going to do. The difficulty about opposition, the difficulty about putting yourself forward to the British people, it's easy, isn't it, from the sidelines to say, we'll stop the boats, we'll stop crime, we'll stop migration, I genuinely hand on heart and I voted for Reform. You know, I've heard Richard said to me on this show, day one we'd attack the blob. Is the reality, though, that's fine, and I don't have to disagree with it, but people will consider looking at various parties saying what they're going to do and then seemingly getting into power. If I was anything to do with Reform, I would be saying that messaging is really, really important, to say it again and again to convince people, and also have people, Trump-esque, I know people don't like the analogy, who don't care if they get flack or bad publicity or people resign. Think Margaret Thatcher. Everybody knew that Margaret Thatcher in the end would be fired because there were 400 MPs, and if you disagree with her, you lost your job. And then guess what? 10 years down the line, there were 400 on one side of the room that she'd sacked and her on the other, and she was toast. But she did what she said she was going to do. That's what I want.
And that is vital for any party that aspires to be the next party of government. And what Reform has got to do, if they are serious about being the next government, which I know they are, these big things that they are pledging, and it's far too early for pledges, but let's just say stop the boats, take that as an example. They've got to actually make it happen within the first few days of taking power, and that means they've got to be ready to know how exactly they are going to do it. And you know, I have these conversations quite often with my partner, with Richard Tice, the deputy leader. It's very easy to say we're going to do this, we're going to do that. Are you sure it's not going to be a little bit harder And of course it's harder. You know, everybody finds...
And that's where your critics, that's where the critics of reform, and I go back to this conversation I had with Rob last night, that's what his issue is that many people in reform, whether the leadership like this or not, feel that the argument between Farage and Lowe was that Lowe's still speaking the language that reform was talking, hear me out, but is Farage becoming a little bit more centrist because he needs to get a wider group of people to vote for him to get in to do those things? That's where the argument, that's where the battleground lies, is convincing people that you need to get elected, but that you don't trade a lot of what actually got people on your side to get there. That's what I see. I mean, I believe in Nigel Farage, but there will be people now who voted for reform last time who are going, he's moved away from what he used to say.
Trust me, he hasn't moved away from that. But what I would say overall is, look, the stakes are really, really high here. I no longer recognise my own country. I love what Britain was and I love what Britain could be. But at the moment, the country that I see is not something that I think we are or we should be. It's got
Couldn't agree more. I could not agree more. I'm being shouted at by Ryan. You know what it's like when Ryan... Does he shout at you, Isabel? Does he shout a lot at me? I'm quite traumatised by the whole thing. Thank you, as ever, for coming on. We really appreciate it. We started with Snow White and finished with Reform. The amazing Isabel Oakeshott, 6:25. We're live across the UK. Kev O'Sullivan here with his political asylum from 7 o'clock. I'm going for a wee. I'll be back in 3.
Easter and Christmas and other events in the Christian calendar, they are national public holidays in a nationally constitutionally Christian country, and they are part of our national tradition and our culture. And if you want to be inclusive, bringing people of all faiths and none into that national history and culture is the most inclusive thing you can do.
They don't want inclusivity, they don't want diversity and stuff. The whole idea is to break down British culture and values and British connection with the people.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Oh, welcome back, 6:28. We're live across the UK. I literally, if you could see what happens, I wish we had a camera. Somebody's just told me about a new daytime television show that launched today. Let's move on. Badenoch has never won the PM's question since she got top job. Totally weak person. Stop bleating on about those sheep. You would not like catching bird flu. Do you see what they did there, Jodie? You would not like. You would not like. You... Right, dear Jeremy, sheep allow birds to ride on their backs. Oh, here we go. So it's riding a sheep. Because the birds feed on the bugs that live in the wool. Andrew in Herne Hill. Let's do that again. Sheep allow birds to ride on their backs because the birds feed on the bugs that live in the wool. Ryan, have you ever allowed a bird to ride on your back because you've got bugs in your hair? I've no idea. It's all very weird. Good. Jez. Humans and mammals can get bird flu. Sometimes... Oh, OK. It's all right. Don Chelmsford, brilliant. It's rather ruined everything. Just diseases spread through drinking from the same water source, so no bird got it on with a sheep. You're welcome. I never imply... What a terrible assumption. Isn't it interesting? We've had more text messages about sheep flu, getting a bird getting sheep... No, whatever. Maybe the sheep identifies as a bird, therefore able to catch bird flu. Just a thought, says Liam. I'm loving that. Jeremy, London's top club is Barnet, 14 points clear. In the Dame Ed and Reveridge, I've got a hole in my shorts division. I don't know. Hello, Derek. Listen, thank you very much indeed. Oh, but very quickly, Dave Turner. Evening, Jez. Absolutely agree with your caller Steve from East Yorkshire earlier, but I gave Nigel my 25 quid last year with all the hype and TV coverage coming from Reform, but it seems like they've fizzled out like a damp firework. I made several attempts to contact Reform as I was thinking of standing locally. Absolutely nothing back apart from my 25 quid. Cheers, Jez. Keep up the good show. Oh, Christine, finally, in Teesside. Lovely part of the world. More messages never get read out. My messages never get read out. Am I wasting my time? That last caller could have been me. Couldn't agree more. I'm so fed up. Every day more negativity, and if I could leave, I would. I fear for my grandkids. The NHS is woke, and I can't wait to retire next month after 50 years, physically knackered and not too much of a future to look forward to. Well, you've got us to look forward to, Christine and Teesside, because we completely agree with you here at Talk, and we will keep banging the drum. And you are not ignored at all. And anybody who ignores her text messages will be in trouble. From Stroppy Ryan. 0344 499 1000. Let's go to Edinburgh. Jim, you're on Talk Drive. Good evening. How are you?
Hi, good afternoon. I'm well, Jeremy. I hope you are too. I love your show. Thanks for taking my call.
Pleasure.
Something just struck me out this afternoon. I was thinking, with all these cuts that are maybe happening on Wednesday, do you think Rachel from Accounts has done her sums and thought, we've got so many people on our payroll, this extra contribution for national insurance that we have to pay, we can't afford. So we're now going to have to let some people go.
It could absolutely be the case. I've no idea. I mean, all we know is, and for people just tuning in, the Rachel Thieves, or Richard III, allegedly tomorrow in a spring statement, could risk the wrath of the unions, in brackets, their paymasters, with 50,000 civil service job cuts to save money. I put this to you, Jim, what I put actually throughout the show. If the Labour Party, who are in hock to the unions, for all the reasons we know, if they can find 50,000 people doing jobs that are irrelevant out of 650,000, what's the true bleeding number, Jim?
Exactly. We're all just being pulled along for the ride. We're all just sheep, and we're all just these politicians. They know what they're doing, and they know how to look after themselves and to damn with the rest of the country. That's exactly what's going on. But it's just interesting how they now can't find the money from the very tax they're putting up to pay for these people. And I get there's probably too many people with jobs that need to not be there, but 50,000, come on, that's a lot of people going to go out of work. And then what happens, the knock-on effect, they're going to claim benefits.
It's really interesting. You're saying, is it because the government can't afford their national insurance contributions? All the increase. Listen, really good point. I was in your city 2 weeks ago seeing my daughter who's at Edinburgh University. It's beautiful. We love it. Jim in Edinburgh, thank you so much indeed. Let's head south to Gloucester, from whence Dr. Foster came. But this caller's called David. Hello.
Hello, Jeremy. How are we?
Not too bad for a balding 60-year-old has-been. What's happening in Gloucester?
Oh, it's been a beautiful day today. It was a bit cold this morning, but once the sun burned through, it was absolutely glorious.
Get us. We've got local weather forecasts happening now on Talk Drive.
There you go, see?
Yeah, listen, what do you want to talk about, my friend?
Well, you were saying earlier on about the fact that 52% of the population, or 52%, now rely on the state for some kind of income.
Yeah.
So when you think about it, so if that's 52 versus 48, we won't go back to the Brit exit vote, plus all these other people that have got, all these immigrants that can now claim can vote. Well, they are not going to vote to break the system, so they will carry on voting Labour. It is all set up by Tony Blair 25 years ago, or a little bit more, 30 years ago. So basically to say, you will carry on voting Labour because turkeys will not vote for Christmas to break the system. So what you were saying earlier about if you got up and said, I will do this and I will do that, I totally agree with you. I would love a politician to do it. But they will, even if they did, not many people would vote. Only the likes of us who are a bit more politically savvy.
But the likes of us, at the risk of sounding old-fashioned and boring, are the likes of us not actually far greater in number and importance than we've ever believed we were? Are we not actually, not just as a movement, right? But I listen to Mike in the mornings. There are thousands, hundreds of millions of people in this country who have basically had enough being taken advantage of. And we're not unfair, and we're not harsh, and we're not mean, and we're not racist. We're simply saying, do you know what? We've worked quite hard. We'd like to sort of get something back from that. We're not actually mean and horrible people, but there's a sort of balance, and actually watching other people screw what we were supposed to have ourselves, them getting it at us to the detriment of us, not actually us, people who, servicemen, pensioners, whatever, that's not right. Can you get your priorities right? That's my word, priorities. That's all I want. I want politicians who make the right decisions and they're made on the right priorities, and I just don't see it. David in Gloucester, thank you very much indeed. 0344 499. See, Mike Graham's done me now. Loving the show, mate. Big show tomorrow. Can't say too... What does that mean now? It's got me in a right pickle. Big show in the morning. Can't say too much. But now I don't know. See, that's going to depress me enormously. Listen to Mike Graham. It's the only way to wake up, by the way. Don't listen to all that. 6 o'clock in the morning. This man is made for this show. It's amazing. I love him. It's a tremendous show. Please listen. Also, I've got to be very careful when I do this. Kinsey Schofield. I just mentioned somebody had been telling me about a new daytime television show, which is... she said, I hope you're talking about... Yeah, I was. Yes, I was, actually, Kinsey, and a cup of cold sick. 24 minutes to 7 o'clock. We're live across the UK. So, Mike, I don't know what he's talking about. Can somebody phone Mike Graham and ask... Why don't we get him on? Big show tomorrow. What time am I going to be listening? Stress. Back in 3.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Way to wake up. So I've just heard a McDonald's advert that says breakfast done properly, and they've nicked that from Mike Graham. That is breakfast done properly. Now, he sent me a message saying, loving the show, big show tomorrow, can't say too much. I now, listen, wherever you are, whatever you're doing tomorrow, tune in. I can't say, honestly, tune in. Different class. Mike Graham at breakfast. Honestly, I feel like a pimple on the backside. Honestly, right, Ryan, what have you done? I mean, his show, honestly, have you listened to his show? Makes us look idiotic, man. We need to step up. Step up to Mike Graham's brilliant. Have a listen, by the way, it's brilliant. Tomorrow morning, 20 minutes to 7 o'clock. We're live across the UK. Take a breath. 0344 499 1000. When I realise that the world's going nuts, whether it's Snow White or just the fact that we seem to look after everybody and you can't say Jack anymore, there's only one person to call upon to bring my stress levels down and make me feel better about life. Chris McGovern, Chairman of Campaign for Real Education. A very good evening, sir. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you, and particularly because I support Aston Villa, so even happier than ever.
All right. You support Aston Villa?
I do indeed, so I'm happy, and I know you're a West Ham supporter, so look, we're old rivals.
Get off.
We get on.
Get off, man. Before we talk
Don't
about...
be like that.
Before we talk about this extraordinary story about university fraud, any view on the Snow White film? Have you heard this story?
I've heard the story, yeah. Why can't we leave fairy tales alone? You know, fairy tales were written a long time ago, Brothers Grimm in the 19th century, and they encompass wisdom which goes back centuries, and we need to keep them as they are. They don't need updating. They need to go back in time.
And also, you'd think, wouldn't you? You'd think Disney, like, you know, let's spend $350 million on remaking the classic Snow White, just for people who are just tuning in. Nobody wants to watch it, apparently. It's literally, they're doing no sort of premieres. The theatres are empty. The movie recast the classic elements of the story in a progressive light, including... you love this, Chris. Ditching popular songs, including Whistle While You Work, because that will offend people who are unemployed. Well, get off your ass and get a job. Replacing the 7 dwarfs with a reimagined group of magical creatures. Now, that's upset dwarfs who want to work in films and don't get many opportunities. So that in trying to do that, that's hacked them off. And scrapping the entire sexiest romantic plot, because why would Snow White fall in love with a man? She could have a penis, she could be a lesbian. That's what we're dealing with. The world's gone nuts.
It has gone mad. So let's go back to the old fairy tales. I think most people would agree with you, Jeremy.
Just ridiculous. We wanted to get you on because it's a great story. I say great, it's slightly worrying. The Education Secretary, who I wouldn't trust with anybody's education, that's just my opinion, Bridget Phillipson, has asked counter-fraud experts to lead an investigation into reports of millions of pounds in student loans being claimed by people with no intent to study. It's a surprise. Follows a report in the Sunday Times at the weekend which says it found evidence of some individuals enrolling on degree courses at small colleges just to access loans external with no intention of paying them back. Phillipson has called on the Public Sector Fraud Authority to coordinate the government's response to the allegations to support investigations underway. Writing in the Times, she said it pointed to one of the biggest financial scandals in the history of the university sector. Chris McGovern, thoughts?
So certainly a gigantic scandal. It's also a monument to the failure of government over several decades. We were saying 10, 15, 20 years ago that probably half of the university should be closed down. We have some very good universities, of course, but a lot of them are just there to employ staff, and they're offering fake degrees, Mickey Mouse degrees, Labour called them, and they don't provide a good education, do not give you a pathway to a job. Now, what's getting even worse by the year, now we're having a lot of overseas students signing up for courses at what are called franchise colleges. They get a franchise from a university, so the theory they can offer a degree, and they're taking the loan, and then they're not paying it back. Look, most people don't pay back the loans anyway. This is going to be billions of pounds. But
do they not? Right. So I've got to do. So they don't pay back the loans. People, they can just get. You only start paying it back when you reach a level. Is that right of earning? So if you don't reach that level, you don't have to pay it back.
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, some people pay some of it back, but about 25% currently are paying back their full student loan. So it's a massive hole in our finances. And it's all because what is it? It's causing harm because we're encouraging, Tony Blair was behind this, encouraging so many young people to go into higher education, into universities. And then they're some of them, look, some great universities, they're not going to be against all universities, but a lot of them are unemployable when they leave university. I spoke to a national conference a few years ago, admissions tutors to universities, and I said to them, look, a lot of your students are working in coffee bars and so forth as baristas. They're not working in the job for which they're qualified for. And there was a hushed silence in the room But fortunately, it was witnessed by the press. After that conference, it was a national conference, 3 university admissions tutors came up to me privately and quietly and said, "Chris, thank you for saying that, because no one else will say it."
Well, I've been saying for years, and it didn't go down very well. And listen, I went to university 40 years ago, and freely admit I did a second-rate degree and had a great time. So I'm in effect, I'm a hypocrite. But I think it was, I don't know, early 2020s, on the radio somewhere, possibly television, and somebody told me that at Keele University, I've told this story before, at Keele University, you can do a marketing degree and you could major in brand Beckham. I'm afraid there are too many universities and colleges of higher education. I'm trying to sound elitist. There are too many Mickey Mouse degrees, as you quite rightly said. There's too many people being pigeonholed to go when they... How do I put this? Well, basically shouldn't. Just go and get some life experience. Go and get a job. We're obsessed with pushing people. I'm not into elitism, but I want the best people to go and get the best degrees that are beneficial to this country. And if you end up with massive debts, explain how that makes any sense, because it doesn't.
You're right, Jen, but actually I'm sure you also want there to be plumbers and electricians and roofers and bricklayers.
I'm big on apprenticeships. We need to do far more on apprenticeships.
So we're sending these young people on Mickey Mouse degrees, and we don't have enough skilled craftsmen and women. So we have to import them. So we have to have immigration, because we need to have skilled workers. You know, why on earth are we running a system where we're educating children for a basically to unemployment or underemployment? And we need lots of skilled workmen and work women. So we need to really rebalance and reposition our education system so that, yes, of course we need academics and we need good, great universities, but we also need to highly value people we used to call as having a trade. Those people, those plumbers and electricians, they're earning a great deal of money, but kids never get to know that. I mean, most teachers have no idea of the world of work outside the classroom. I did loads of jobs before I became a teacher, but most teachers don't have that experience. But we need to get into the classrooms and tell kids, look, there are other pathways than going to universities.
So at the moment, my son's 16 on Sunday, and he wouldn't mind me saying this, not a massive academic, has an ability, a sporting ability, and he's going to go to a college with that, okay, golf. But again, you have to stay on at 16, or you have to do that. I used to work with the Sun on the Employment Roadshows for years. I am massive on apprenticeships. I think apprenticeships should be pushed. I think you should be able to go and do an apprenticeship at 16. I think you should be able to leave school and do an apprenticeship. I am so with you. Practical common sense in education seems to disappear. I mean, again, I don't want to be... I mean, I had a conversation with a teacher recently who was talking to me about grades. And I was pointing out what was needed. And this teacher was saying, yes, but even if that's achieved, surely you want to redo them again to get more. No, I'm not interested in your percentages. I'm interested in getting what needs to be got to go to the next level. No, you're not listening. You're not listening. That's fine. And I do think that a lot of teachers, and I'm not being disrespectful across the whole thing, but I think a lot of it now becomes, it's very difficult, and it's all about, you know, your results, and you're based on targets and graphs and all of that. We don't seem to tailor education to individual kids, but I'm with you. If you could say to some 16-year-olds or 18-year-olds who aren't ever going to be the sorts of kids that will get what needs to be got from university, will end up hugely in debt or dropping out, whatever, go and get a trade. YTS used to, of course it was a rip-off, but get a job and 2 days a week go to college. Does the government share the cost of that? That's got to be cheaper than what they're spending on these loans, isn't it?
Look, you're right. And there is some good news on this. I'm not a Tory, but I will say this for the Tories in Scotland. They said a couple of weeks ago that kids at the age of 14 should be able to choose that vocational path. It was dressed up in the press as you can leave school at 14, but what they're really saying in Scotland is that at the age of 14, you can go on a vocational apprenticeship pathway. You haven't all got to go on an academic. So, you know, for once the Tories got something right, which is fantastic.
Well, this is interesting. This is Kenny from Edinburgh. He says, could you ask the expert, is there an actual Mickey Mouse degree somewhere?
Well, I'll tell you what, it was Mrs. Hodge, a Labour Party spokesman, who used the term Mickey Mouse degrees. So a lot of people think it's some sort of right wing. No, it came from the left. It's degrees which basically you don't lead to a job. But is it in Mickey Mouse? Well, look, I'm not against cartoon and animation. That's what you're talking about. But look, when we say Mickey Mouse, it's an analogy to say it's a worthless degree.
Are you allowed to say Mickey Mouse, or should it be Mickey/Minnie or they Mouse or something? We don't want to upset people, do we? Chris,
the world is going crazy. The world is going mad. And there are a few people like you who are actually pointing this out, but not many are, I'm afraid.
You're a good man, Chris. Lovely to have you on as ever. Chairman for Real Education, Chris McGovern, 11 minutes to 6. Louise, Jez, you'll have to get up at 5:45 in the morning if you want to make Morning Glory, because she said, I listen 4 hours every morning, but I need 15 minutes to wake up and get a cup of coffee. Jez, real quick, says Tim, a qualified brickie is making 350 quid a day. Absolutely. Louise, spot on reference, Jez, about reform. A lot of reform members are starting to worry that Nigel has blinkers on. Jenrick is out-reforming them. He's sounding more to the right of centre at the moment. They need to be careful. Also, the Runcorn candidate is a bad choice, Jez. Great show, Louise. 0344 419 1000. Kev O'Sullivan here from 7 with his political asylum. Petri Hoskins from 10 and Mike Graham, the legend, back with Morning Glory tomorrow from 6. Let's talk.
The body cam cameras at the moment, there will be a facility, I'm sure, that will not just capture that interaction when I arrest you, Ian, on the street if I'm a police officer, but will also scan your image and tell me exactly who you are. Are you on a watch list or not? So that facility, I'm sure, is coming. You walk through the camera, your face is scanned. If you're not on the watch list, that data is deleted from the database. That's really, really important.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
That was Chris McGovern, the Campaign for Real Education. Now, to make you understand how the conversation then proceeds during the break, Ryan I went to Bournemouth University, that's where I met Lauren, right? And the girls are going, don't give Jez any more, because he'll repeat it, just don't. We've got from this that they kissed on the first date. He then went 5 months ignoring her because he had another woman, then she came crawling back. He was 6'5", dark-haired, thought that, you know, she's going to... Anyway, and now they're married. Honestly, and he said we had... But the most interesting thing of all is the nightclub that they first kissed in was called the Fire Station. So Jodie's already come out with chopper and helmet and all the stuff that you would imagine that Liverpudlian woman would come out with. But there we go. Not woman, lady, bird, woman. Oh, you know, friend. 0344 419 1000. Let's go to Essex. We haven't got much time. Jay, you're on Talk Drive. Good evening.
Oh, hi, Jeremy. Just a quickie. I think when Rachel Reeves announced the national insurance increase.
Yes.
It doesn't apply to the government because they said there's no point because it's going to go back to them anyway.
Right. So that rather deletes what we said last time. What do you make of this? What do you make of this proposed 50,000 potential blob cuts? Do you think it'll happen, or do you think it's just words?
No, they haven't. They've lied at everything. You can't trust a word they say. But the Conservative MP you had on that said...
Graham Stewart.
They've been awarded 2.8%.
Yeah.
Independent review. They haven't voted it for it themselves. The WASPy women, that was the independent review as well, and they're totally ignoring that. So how can they back one and say, oh yeah, we're going to take 2.8, but you can't have yours? If it's an independent review, it should be the same.
I think the WASPy women thing is another example. I mean, somebody said earlier, they looked the WASPy women in the eye, the Labour Party. They looked farmers in the eye. They went to the farmers' conference and said, you will be better off under us. I've got clips of Starmer on 5 occasions. We did this on Plank of the Week last week. 5 occasions he said, watch me, listen to me, watch my lips. The British People's Council tax, you not a penny more on your council tax bill. So much of it's BS. And yet, despite all of that, we find ourselves totally and utterly skinned. It's pretty appalling, isn't it?
That coal they keep talking about, it's nothing to do with money. It's where their brain and their heart should be. There is nothing. They are absolute cretins.
I love that word. Are you a Reform voter, a Tory voter?
Yes. I was Tory all my life until last time. They're not making enough noise. They should be screaming from the rooftops now.
Exactly.
And you can't hear them.
I completely agree. It's great to have you on, Jay. Thanks for making it talk. Let's go finally today to London. We're in London, so it doesn't matter. Georgina, you got a couple of minutes. What you got?
Hello, Jess. You are a vision of happiness and health, as always. I want to say that charity begins at home, my love. The only thing Angela Rayner has slashed is the financial votes of us, the British taxpayers. We need to get our own financial house in order before we even think of helping other countries with problems in their gardens.
It's really interesting. I used this phrase earlier, and I totally understand that to a lot of people it's a word you should. I completely agree with you. You know, this charity does begin at home, but it's not even that, right? If you set your stall out, as Great Britain always has, as being, you know, we do the right thing, we're very... I get all that. I'm really happy to do that, but we are no longer financially able to provide that clout. And it's really simple to me. If I've got bills to pay, if I've got any left over, you can have it. If I haven't, right, you ain't having it until I've... I am so with you. And yet there is this obsession with seemingly trying to do the right thing to... There seems to be an obsession amongst politicians today that it's more important about how you look in terms of in the rest of the world. I mean, they tell me about the ECHR, oh, Belarus, Russia. I don't give a stuff. I don't give a stuff that Churchill wrote it. Churchill would be... Right now, Winston Churchill would be going, tear that up. It's a load of old rubbish. People are taking advantage and coming into this country. I think a lot of people feel the same, don't you?
Yeah, I absolutely do. The only people benefiting from this government is itself. And they're spending our cash like it's going out of fashion. I don't know who's keeping an eye on their spending, or the borders in France to stop them coming over here because we're paying them.
Hold on a second, though. Hold on a second. These people are escaping war-torn countries.
Oh, please don't. Do you want to give me anxiety? Just don't do it to me, please.
Yeah, but no, come on. Let's be truthful. It's not war-torn. It's just quite cold in a tent in France. It's a lot better in a four-star hotel in England, isn't it? Let's be perfectly... Oh, you can't say that, Jez. You'll offend people. Rubbish.
Well, let's start with our own people, Jez. Let's start with the English families who are in dire need of somewhere to sleep. Let's start with them, or our elderly who need heating, or our farmers who need help, or our NHS that needs to wake up and get out of this wokerati that they're in. You know, who's watching over all this? Stevie Wonder, because nothing's happening and nothing's being seen. Honestly.
I love you because you make me realise that it's not just me. Georgina in London, thank you. Rob Newman, the best thing I ever did was leave school and move out of home at 16, started a YTS job 7 days for, I think, 35 quid, but a lump much more than the last few years in school. A very good evening to a person who used to be a TV critic, Kev
Yes, I
O'Sullivan.
did. Yes, I did. I was a very revered.
Is it a good
TV
moment to tell you that I'm back at ITV starting next Tuesday? Are you going to review it for me?
You bet, yeah. What are you doing? GB News? No, GB, what do you call it?
No.
What do you call it?
Jeremy
Good
Carl's,
Morning Britain.
No, Jeremy Carl's Life Stories is on next Tuesday at 9 p.m. And do you know what the date is? April the 1st. Any other new television programmes on?
There is one, yeah, but I watched it and I'm still in a state of shock.
Are you? What you got, kidder? Do you know what Kinsey just texted me and went, is that